Story 1. Hi, Reddit. My name is Kyle. I'm 34 years old. Before everything I'm about to tell you, I was just a regular guy from the suburbs. I worked as an IT consultant, made good money but didn't flaunt it. I had a wife, a dog, a house with a mortgage, and a best friend I'd known for 16 years. Now I have no wife, no best friend, but I have his ex-wife, his kids, and the house I fought for. I'm not writing this because I'm proud. I'm writing this because if even one person reads it and notices the red flags in time, I didn't waste my time. Mark and I met in college. Sophomore year, they put us in the same dorm block. He came from a wealthy family, his father owned a chain of car washes. But Mark wasn't a spoiled jerk. He was funny, could talk to anyone, and was always ready to help. When my car broke down, he towed me to a shop and paid for the repairs without me asking. When my grandmother died, he flew to the funeral in another state, even though he'd only met her twice. We went through everything together: drunken fights, debt, exams, girls, broken hearts. I considered him a brother. My parents called him their second son. After college, I went into IT, and he went into the construction business. We didn't see each other for a couple of years, but we talked every week. Then he married Sarah. Sarah was a nurse, quiet, with a soft smile and a habit of crocheting in any free minute. I thought, Mark, you found a treasure. Mark just laughed. Yeah, she's boring as a kennel, but at least she's loyal. I met Jessica when I was 25. She worked as a barista at a coffee shop near my office. I went there every morning, and after a month, she said, "You drink oat milk lattes with cinnamon." I remember because you're the only one who doesn't yell at me when I mess up. We started dating. She was bright, emotional, could start a fight over me putting plates away wrong, but 5 minutes later, she'd be laughing at a stupid cat video. The sex was great. She initiated, experimented. I thought I was lucky. 2 years later, I proposed. We got married in a small hall with 50 people. Mark was the best man. Sarah was a bridesmaid. Jessica and Sarah became friends. They often went shopping together, drank wine, gossiped. I was happy. I had a house, a job, a beautiful wife, a loyal friend, and his sweet wife. An idol. The first 5 years of marriage were good. We bought a house for $380,000 in a nice neighborhood. I paid the mortgage. She worked as an assistant at an architecture firm, making $40,000 a year. My income grew to $220,000. Jessica would say, "We're a team." But she often complained that I worked too much. "You're always on your laptop, Kyle. You miss dinners." I tried. I asked clients to reschedule meetings. I left work at 6 p.m. instead of 9 p.m. But it was never enough for her. Around that time, Mark divorced Sarah. He told me, "We just fell out of love. She's too domestic. I want freedom." I asked, "Did you cheat on her?" He said, "No, we just burned out." I believed him. Because not believing your best friend is like not believing yourself. Jessica said, "Poor Mark. He's so lonely. Let's invite him over for dinner." I agreed. I was glad to help a friend. At first, he came once a week. Then 3 times a week. Then every night. He brought wine, helped Jessica cook, fixed a faucet I could never get around to, painted the fence. I was grateful. I thought, this is what a true friend does. Helps around the house while I'm at work. One day, I came home at 3 p.m. I wanted to surprise her. I bought flowers. I walk in. Music is playing in the bedroom. The door is ajar. I push the door open. There's a man's t-shirt on the bed that isn't mine. And jeans that aren't mine. I call Jessica. She says, "I'm at the gym." I say, "That's weird. I'm home, and your car is in the garage." A 3-second pause. She says, "Oh, I forgot my keys." I walked back, "I'll be right up." 15 minutes later, she walks in with wet hair, wearing workout leggings. But she's wearing makeup. Who goes to the gym with a full face of makeup? I ask about the t-shirt. She says, "Mark helped me move the dresser. He sweated through his shirt and change." I ask, "Mark changes clothes in our bedroom?" She laughs, "You're so paranoid, Kyle. He just dropped his bag." I wanted to believe. I didn't want to be the jealous husband who sees cheating in every shadow. But something clicked inside. I decided to check. I work in IT. I know how to collect data, analyze patterns, find anomalies. I applied it to my family. First, I bought 3 voice recorders. Small ones, $30 each from Amazon. I hid one in the bedroom, in a shoebox on the top shelf of the closet. The second under the seat of her car. The third in the garage, where they often talked when I thought she was in the bathroom. Second, I turned on the camera in the hallway. We had a camera for the dog. We set it up when we left town so Buddy wouldn't get lonely. Jessica knew about the camera. I just connected it to a cloud storage account she didn't know about. Now it recorded 24/7. Third, I reset the password for her iCloud. I knew her security question, our dog's name, which she loved. I logged into her cloud and turned on message sync to my old iPad. She didn't notice. Fourth, I hired a private investigator. Victor, a former cop, with a patch that said, "Honesty is a commodity." He cost me $12,000 for 3 months, but it was the best money I ever spent. The first recording came 2 days later. I sat in my car in the office parking lot because I couldn't listen to it at home. I put on my headphones. I hear the garage door open. 11:15 p.m. I'm on a business trip in Chicago. Footsteps. Mark's voice. Is he gone? Jessica's voice. Yeah, that nerd flew to Chicago. We have 3 days. A kiss. The sound of them walking to the bedroom. Jessica. Just don't be loud, the neighbors will hear. Mark. Screw them. When's he back? Jessica. Thursday night. We have time. Mark. I'm tired of hiding. Tell him. Jessica. Not now. He gets his bonus in December. 40,000. We'll wait until January. I'll file for divorce, say he beat me. No one checks. I'll get the house, alimony, and half his 401k. Mark. What if he fights it? Jessica. Courts always side with women. Plus, I already talked to a lawyer, Jim Harris. He said if I claim domestic violence, Kyle will be out of the house the same day. The cops will drag him out in his underwear. Mark laughs. You're ruthless. Jessica. But soon we'll be living in his house and spending his money. He deserves it. He never paid attention to me. I listened to this and couldn't believe my ears. I never hit her. I never raised a hand to her. I yelled twice in 7 years. Once when she crashed my car, once when she hit me first. And now she was going to tell the court I was a rapist? That I beat her? This wasn't just cheating. This was a planned takeover of my life. I sat in my car and cried. Then I wiped my tears and said to myself, Kyle, now you play without rules. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I listened to all the recordings. 200 audio files, 15 videos. I took screenshots of their messages. In one, Mark wrote, "Today he said he loves you." I almost laughed in his face. Jessica replied, "A sucker's love is worth nothing. As long as he keeps paying the mortgage." I found Sarah's number. Mark's ex-wife. We hadn't spoken since their divorce. I messaged her. Hi, Sarah. It's Kyle. We need to meet. It's about Mark and Jessica. Very serious. She replied 2 hours later, I know. Meet me at the Starbucks on Main Street at 11 a.m. tomorrow. We met. Sarah looked tired. Dark circles under her eyes, hair in a bun, wearing an old sweater. She said, I know what they're doing. I know about the affair. I know about their plans. I have evidence that will bury them. I asked, why didn't you tell me sooner? She answered, because I was scared. Mark threatened me. He said if I told anyone, he'd make sure I lost the kids. Also, he said Jessica is a psychopath who's capable of anything. I asked, what evidence? Sarah pulled out a folder. Inside were Mark's tax returns for 3 years, copies of contracts with forged signatures, letters from creditors. It turned out Mark had forged signatures on 12 contracts totaling $2.2 million. He also hadn't paid payroll taxes for his employees minus $200,000 in debt to the IRS. If this came out, he wouldn't just face fines, he'd face criminal charges in prison. Sarah said, I didn't turn him in before because I thought about the kids. But now I see they're better off without such a father. He hasn't even paid child support for 6 months. I asked, will you help me? She said, I'll help you destroy him. But in return, I want you to help me with custody. Your testimony in court will carry weight. We shook hands. I went to Andrew Garrett, the best divorce lawyer in the state. His office is downtown, on the 25th floor, overlooking the river. He looked at me, at my folders of evidence, and said, Kyle, you're sitting on a bomb. If we do everything right, you'll walk away clean. If we make a mistake, she gets half of everything plus alimony. I asked, what do I do? He said, first, don't say a word to her or Mark. Smile, be the perfect husband. Second, Transfer all savings to a trust account in your mother's name. Do it on a Friday night so the banks freeze the transfer over the weekend. When she files for divorce on Monday, the money will be gone. Third, buy another hidden camera and point it at the front door. Fourth, if she tries to provoke a fight, don't engage. If she hits you, don't hit back. Just leave and call the police. I transferred $180,000. $150,000 of it was mine, $30,000 was her contribution to the marriage. Legally, I had the right because the account was opened by my mother before the marriage. Jessica couldn't touch it. I also changed all my credit card passwords and removed her from my phone plan. I bought a hidden camera disguised as a phone charger and put it on the nightstand in the living room. For 2 weeks, I lived like an actor. I said, "I love you," when I wanted to rip my tongue out. I smiled when she said she was going to see a friend, knowing she was going to Mark. I made her breakfast even though the smell of her perfume made me nauseous. It was hell, but I thought about how if I lost my temper, she would win. I chose Friday, December 15th, 2 weeks before Christmas. Jessica was planning to file for divorce in January, after my bonus. But I decided to beat her to it. I came home at 6 p.m. She was sitting on the couch in a silk robe, drinking a martini. I asked, "Celebrating something?" She smiled, "Just a good day. Mark helped me with some work papers." I put a bottle of champagne on the table, one I'd bought specifically for this. She was happy. I poured for both of us. 20 minutes later, I said, "Jess, I have a gift for you. An early Christmas surprise." I took out the remote, turned on the TV, connected my laptop via HDMI. On the screen appeared the recording from the hallway camera from November 10th. Mark walks in at 9 p.m., kisses Jessica at the door, they laugh and walk to the bedroom. You can hear her say, "Just don't be loud." Kyle called and said he'd be late. Jessica froze. Her face turned white. The martini glass fell from her hand and shattered on the carpet. She whispered, "Kyle, it's not what you think. It's photoshopped. You can't." I said, "Don't, Jess. I have 47 more videos and 200 audio recordings, including the one where you discuss how to frame me as an abuser to take the house. Want to hear it?" I hit play. Jessica's voice. "I'll say he hit me in the face. That he threatened me with a gun. That he locked me in the basement. Judges always believe women." Mark's voice. "What if he denies it?" Jessica. "He has no proof. But I'll have bruises, I'll make them myself." She screamed. A real, hysterical scream that made the dog tuck his tail. She started throwing pillows at me, then a vase, then a mug. I just stood there and watched. I didn't dodge, I didn't defend myself. I pulled out my phone and started recording video. She screamed, "You monster. You're ruining my life." I said, "I'm ruining it? You were planning to ruin mine, Jess. You wanted me arrested for violence that never happened." At that moment, the front door opened. Mark. He walked in, as usual, without knocking. He saw me, saw the TV, saw her in hysterics. He went pale. I said, "Mark, have a seat. I have a gift for you too." I opened the second file. Copies of his tax returns with IRS annotations. Copies of the forged contracts. Photos of his accounts. I said, "You know that forging signatures on municipal contracts is a federal crime, right? Up to 10 years. I've already sent a package to the district attorney and the IRS. Anonymously. But with a guarantee they'll start an investigation Monday morning." Mark lunged at me. He tried to punch me. I do jiu-jitsu 3 times a week. I sidestepped, and he crashed into the wall, putting his head through the drywall. Blood ran down his face. I said, "Attacking me now adds assault charges." And I caught it all on the living room camera. "See that phone charger over there? That's a camera." Mark froze. Jessica was shrieking. I walked out of the house, got in my car, and left. I spent the night in a hotel. The next day, I filed for divorce. 7 months of hell. Jessica hired a lawyer named Linda Baker, a known shark who specializes in squeezing everything out of husbands. But against my evidence, they were powerless. The judge, a 60-year-old woman and mother of 3, was furious when she heard the recording of Jessica talking about false abuse accusations. The judge said, "Mrs. Thompson, what you were planning undermines the integrity of the judicial system. You will be held accountable." What I got. The house stayed with me. Jessica demanded 50%, but the court found she hadn't paid the mortgage for the last 8 months. She'd spent the money on shopping, restaurants, and hotels with Mark. The savings stayed with me. The mother's trust account was untouchable because it was opened before the marriage. I pay no alimony. The court ruled she is capable of working. She made $45,000 a year as an architect's assistant. That's enough for one person. I kept the Lexus. It was bought with my money before the marriage. Jessica got her 2015 Honda CR-V, which had been in an accident. It was worth $8,000. Ironic. The dog, Buddy, stayed with me. The judge asked who feeds and walks him. I showed receipts from the pet store and vet clinic for 3 years. She couldn't name the vet. Jessica was ordered to pay my legal fees $25,000 for dragging out the process. She appealed. She lost. She appealed again. She lost again. Her lawyer, Linda Baker, dropped her after the second loss, saying, "Mrs. Thompson, you don't listen to my advice. I can no longer represent you." Jessica was left without a lawyer and tried to represent herself. It was pathetic. She cried in the courtroom, saying I took her home, that she was left on the street. The judge said, "Mrs. Thompson, you are not on the street. You have a job and a car. You have a mother willing to take you in. Mr. Thompson has no further obligations." 3 months after the divorce, Jessica sent me a letter by mail. 7 pages. She wrote that she was sorry, that Mark had used her, that she was depressed, that she was seeing a therapist, that she was taking antidepressants. She wrote that she still loved me and that I was the best thing that ever happened to her. She asked for a second chance, said she was willing to scrub the floors of my house just to come back. I took the letter, photocopied it, sent the copy to my lawyer, and tore the original into tiny pieces and threw it in the trash. The IRS doesn't mess around. 3 days after my anonymous tip, they raided Mark. They seized computers, hard drives, documents. It turned out he had forged not 12 contracts, but 18. Totaling $3.1 million. He also stole money from a fund meant to build a school for disabled children. This was no longer just fraud, it was embezzlement of public funds with aggravating circumstances. His company, Mark Strong Constructions, went bankrupt in 2 months. Creditors filed suits. Suppliers demanded payment. His house was seized. His accounts were frozen. Mark tried to run. He withdrew $50,000 in cash, grabbed his passport, and headed for the Canadian border. But Victor, my pie, was watching him. I tipped off the police to his location. Mark was arrested at a motel 20 miles from the border. In his car, they found an unlicensed pistol and half a kilo of marijuana. 2 more charges were added. The trial took place 6 months later. Mark was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $2.5 million in restitution. Of course, he didn't have the money. He was personally bankrupt. His mother, a 70-year-old woman, sold her house to pay for his lawyer. Mark is now in a prison in New Hampshire. I received a letter from him through a mutual acquaintance. It said, "You won, Kyle. I'm in hell. I hope you're happy. You ruined my mother's life. You ruined my life. I hate you." I didn't reply. But the most interesting part was what happened to his workers. It turned out Mark hadn't paid insurance premiums for 30 employees for 2 years. When this came to light, the workers were furious. One of them, a guy named Jose, came to my office and thanked me. He said, "My wife got cancer, and she had no insurance because of Mark. You helped us, because now the state will pay compensation. I will never forget this, Mr. Kyle." I didn't know what to say. I just shook his hand. Sarah and I kept in touch after the divorce. At first, just as allies. We went to court together for Mark's case. We picked up the kids from school together when Mark tried to contest custody. He wanted the kids to live with his mother while he was in prison, but the court refused. We had coffee together after hearings. I noticed she wasn't like Jessica. Sarah never raised her voice. She listened before speaking. She didn't demand gifts, didn't complain that I worked too much. She was just there. One night, she came over at 2 a.m. because I was having a panic attack. I woke up in a cold sweat, feeling like I was being choked. I called her without thinking. She arrived 20 minutes later, in her pajamas, hair disheveled. She just hugged me and sat in silence for 2 hours. Then she said, "Kyle, what they did to you wasn't your fault. You're not weak. You're strong because you survived." I cried for the first time in months. 4 months later, I realized I was falling in love. I was scared. I thought, what if she's the same? What if she betrays me too? But Sarah was patient. She didn't push, didn't demand certainty, didn't say, "You have to forget the past." She just lived her life, and I was part of it. We started dating, secretly at first, afraid of gossip and what the kids would think. But then I said, screw it. We moved in together at my house 6 months into the relationship. Sarah sold her small apartment and put the money into renovations. We repainted the bedroom, the one where Jessica cheated on me with Mark, in dark blue. We threw out the old bed and bought a new one. Sarah brought her books, her knitting needles, her photos. Her kids, Josh, 9, and Emily, 7, were shy with me at first. Josh called me Mr. Kyle. Emily hid behind her mother's skirt. But I patiently played Lego with them, took them fishing, helped with homework. One day, Josh said, "Kyle, you're better than my dad. Dad never came to my soccer games. You came to all 4. I almost cried. Emily once sat on my lap and said, "Kyle, I want you to be my daddy." Sarah heard it and cried. A year into the relationship, I proposed to Sarah. On the same beach where we first kissed. A simple ring with a small diamond, because she doesn't like flashy things. She said, yes, before I finished the sentence. I don't follow her specifically, but rumors get around. Jessica lost her job at the architecture firm. Everyone found out about the affair and the false abuse accusations. Colleagues gave her dirty looks, no one wanted to work with her. She resigned, voluntarily, but she was really pushed out. She got a job as an admin at a beauty salon. Lasted 3 months, was fired for stealing cosmetics from the supply closet. Yes, I'm serious. She stole mascara and foundation worth $200. Then she worked as a waitress in a bar. Fired for flirting with customers. The bar owner was a woman and didn't tolerate her employees poaching regulars. Then she tried to move back in with her mother. Mary, her mother, initially let her in, but kicked her out after a month. Mary called me and said, "Kyle, I didn't know my daughter was like this." She lies to my face. She says you stole her house. I showed her the court ruling and she called me a traitor. I can't live with her anymore. She's drinking. She brought some man to my house and they stole my earrings. I said, "Mary, this isn't your fault. You're a good mother, but Jessica is an adult." Mary cried. Now Jessica lives in a trailer park on the outskirts of town. I know this because she sent me a letter from there. In it, she wrote that she's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, that she's seen a psychiatrist, that she's on medication. She wrote, "Kyle, I now understand what I did to you. I was sick. Mark manipulated me. I never really wanted to hurt you. I was just afraid you'd leave me, so I decided to leave first." I read that letter, and I felt no anger. Just emptiness. I didn't reply. I just put the letter in a desk drawer and forgot about it. Mark has served 1.5 years of his 5-year sentence. He was denied parole because he broke internal prison rules. He tried to sell phones. I know this from Sarah. She gets notifications as his ex-spouse because she's still connected to him through the kids. Interestingly, Mark wrote a letter to Josh, his son. In the letter, he said, "Your father is not a criminal. Uncle Kyle slandered me. You should hate him." Josh showed me the letter. I asked, "What do you think?" Josh said, "Dad is lying. I saw him being led away by the cops on TV. I know he did bad things. And I don't want to see him." Sarah filed a motion to restrict Mark's correspondence with the children. The court granted it. Now Mark can only write through a social worker, and all letters are screened. Mark lost everything. His business, his house, his money, his friends, his family. His mother died of a heart attack a year after his arrest. They say she couldn't handle the shame. Mark wasn't allowed to attend the funeral. The prison wouldn't let him. Sarah went to her mother-in-law's funeral because the woman had always been kind to her. I went with her. We stood in the cemetery, and I thought about how life can turn upside down in 2 years. It's Saturday morning. I'm sitting on my back porch, drinking coffee, Buddy asleep next to me. Sarah is in the living room, crocheting a scarf for Josh. His birthday is coming up. Josh and Emily are playing Nintendo Switch, yelling and arguing about who won. Sarah is due to give birth in 2 months. Yes, we're having a child together. A girl. We're naming her Chloe. I still see a therapist. Every 2 weeks. We work on trust. Sometimes I think Sarah is on the phone too long, and panic rises inside me. But I'm learning to breathe and tell myself, this isn't Jessica. This is Sarah. She's different. I don't think I was taking revenge. I was defending myself. If they had just divorced me and left, I would have let them go in peace. But they planned to destroy me. They planned to make me an abuser in the eyes of the law. Those kinds of plans have consequences. They paid for them. My advice to anyone going through infidelity: don't show emotion. Gather evidence. Every detail matters. Hire a good lawyer and a private investigator. Expensive, but cheaper than losing your house. Don't take revenge through dirty means. Don't key cars, don't make threats. That makes you look guilty. See a therapist. Without it, you'll go crazy or take your trauma out on new people. Don't rush into a new relationship. I met Sarah by accident. If I had gone looking for her, I would have found another Jessica. And yes, Mark still owes me $30,000 that I lent him to buy an excavator. I know I'll never see it. But I sleep fine. P.S. The funniest thing. Yesterday I found a box in the garage with some of Jessica's things that she forgot. Inside were her love letters to Mark, written while she was still my wife. I read one and almost laughed. My king, when will we finally be together? I'm so tired of pretending to love that boring Kyle. He thinks flowers and dinners fix everything. But I want a real man. I burned those letters in the grill. Sarah stood next to me and held my hand. We roasted marshmallows. So there you go, Reddit. Revenge is a dish best served cold. But even better is just living well and forgetting the ones who wanted to bury you. Story 2. Hi, Reddit. My name is Lauren. I'm 36 years old. I'm sitting on the porch of my new house in Scottsdale, Arizona, drinking pumpkin spice coffee. Yes, I'm one of those people. And on my lap is a sleeping corgi named Goodman. 3 years ago, I couldn't have imagined smiling while remembering my wedding. But now I'm smiling, because that wedding was the funeral march for my naivety. My name is Lauren. 3 years ago, I was Lauren Hale. Now I'm Lauren Baker again, my maiden name. The difference between those two women is 55 pounds of lost weight, thanks, stress, a 180-page court case, and a complete loss of belief in happily ever after. But let me start from the beginning. I promise the story has twists like a damn soap opera. Because reality turned out to be soapier than any opera. I met Daniel in 2014. I was 27, he was 29. I was working as a production assistant at a local TV station in Phoenix, low-paying hell where coffee flows like a river and respect does not. Dan was a real estate agent. But not just any agent. He was the guy who sells million-dollar homes in Paradise Valley. Expensive suits, Omega watches, Mercedes. Back then it wasn't an electric car, but a gas-guzzling monster. Outwardly, he was the embodiment of success. Dark curly hair, blue eyes that became almost transparent in the sun, and a voice that, I thought, melted panties. We met at a gas station. Banal. His car had broken down, he was driving an old Audi that constantly broke down, and he was standing there angry, kicking the tire. I had a set of toe straps in my trunk. I offered help. He looked at me as if I had just cured his cancer. We talked for 3 hours, sitting on the side of the road. He told me his father abandoned the family when Dan was 10, that he worked his way up from a laundromat, that he wanted to prove to everyone that he wasn't just a boy from Tucson. I fell in love, like a fool, like we all fall in love with a potential project, not the real person. We got married in 2016. The wedding was at the Desert Botanical Garden, 120 guests. My dress cost $5,000, I paid with my savings from 6 months of work. Dan insisted we buy a house in Scottsdale, a new townhouse for $780,000. With a mortgage, for 30 years, I was earning $48,000 a year. He was earning about $200,000. But the mortgage was joint. I signed all the papers without reading them. Because I trusted him. Seriously, ladies, never sign anything your husband gives you, even if he swears on his mother's life. Never. The first 5 years were normal. Not perfect, but normal. Dan was busy. Always busy. Property showings, negotiations, meetings. I got used to eating dinner alone. Got used to him coming home at 11 p.m. and going straight to the shower, to wash off the smell of other people's houses. I believed him, because why would he lie? We had sex, infrequent but regular. We went on vacation together to Cabo San Lucas. We had a dog, a black Labrador named Tank. Problems started in 2019. Dan became withdrawn. He started putting his phone face down. Before, he would leave it on the table when he went to shower. Now he took it with him even to the bathroom. I didn't think much of it. I thought, Well, he has important clients, broker data. What an idiot I was. In 2020, during COVID, we were both stuck at home. Dan worked remotely. I lost my TV job, layoffs, and started freelancing, writing copy for real estate websites. And that's when I first noticed the oddities. He was constantly talking on the phone in the garage. Not in his office, not in the living room. In the garage, where it was cold and smelled of gasoline. It's Larry, my business partner, he explained. He's having problems with his wife, he doesn't want her to hear our negotiations. I knew Larry. Larry was a fat, cheerful guy with a beard who collected Zippo lighters. He had a wife, Stacy, who constantly posted smoothies and photos of her nails on Instagram. Why would Larry need to hide from Stacy in my garage? A question I should have asked. But I didn't. In March 2021, Dan said he was going to a real estate agents conference in Santa Barbara. For 3 days, like an obedient wife, I helped him pack. I put in his favorite blue shirts, extra socks, allergy medicine. He kissed me on the forehead, not on the lips, even then it was weird, and left. On the first day of his conference, I was scrolling through Facebook and saw a post from his sister, Jennifer. Jennifer lived in San Diego. She wrote, "I just love Malibu. Thanks to my brother for a wonderful weekend." Attached to the post was a photo. Jennifer, her husband Tom, and Dan. Dan standing in front of the ocean, in shorts and a t-shirt, holding a margarita. In the background was some blonde woman holding his elbow. I couldn't see her face, she was wearing sunglasses and a straw hat. I called Dan. He didn't answer. I texted, "How's the conference?" He replied 2 hours later, "Great. Lots of networking. Tomorrow I'm giving a talk on commercial mortgages." He was lying. He wasn't at any conference. He was in Malibu, with his sister, her husband, and a blonde. I didn't cause a scene right away. I called Jennifer. She hesitated. "Oh, Lauren, I thought you knew. Dan said you were working on a big project and couldn't come. He said you agreed he could take a break alone. He said he was at a real estate conference in Santa Barbara, Jen." Silence. Then Jennifer sighed. "Lauren, I don't know what to say. We were in Malibu. He came with some girl. I asked who she was. He said, 'This is Madison, my new assistant.' She acted strange, all over him. Tom later told me he saw them kissing on the balcony when they thought no one was watching. My legs gave out. I sat down on the kitchen floor. Tank, my Labrador, came over and licked my cheek. I sat there for an hour. Then I called my best friend, Samantha. Samantha is a family lawyer. She listened and said only one thing. Don't tell him you know. Not yet. Gather information. Every check, every message, every oddity. And hire a private investigator. I know a former FBI guy named Roger. He's expensive, but he'll find everything. Even what's been deleted. I hired Roger 3 days later. It cost me $3,500. That was all my savings, which I was putting aside for new teeth. I have an enamel problem, wanted veneers. But teeth could wait. Roger worked for 2 weeks. The result? Daniel Hale, 38, real estate agent, is having a romantic relationship with Madison Clark, 26. A hairdresser from the salon, Glam and Go, in Scottsdale. They've been seeing each other for 8 months. He rents an apartment for her in Tucson, yes, Tucson, 2 hours away from us, with his money. He transferred $12,000 to her account over the last 6 months, marked consulting services. What the hell consulting services can a hairdresser provide to a real estate agent? A blowout for negotiations? Roger also found out that Madison was married. Divorced a year ago. She has a 5-year-old daughter named Ella. The daughter lives with her grandmother. Madison sees her once every 2 weeks. I sat with Roger's folder and cried. Not because he was cheating, but because of all the details. He bought her flowers from the same store where we bought flowers for our anniversary. He took her to the same restaurant, Lawns, on 85th Avenue, where he took me on our first date. He didn't just cheat on me. He copied our story and inserted a different actress. I decided not to reveal my hand until I was ready for the divorce. Jennifer, Dan's sister, yes, became an unexpected ally. It turned out she had been through her own experience with her husband Tom's infidelity 2 years earlier. She knew what it was like. And she told me, "I love my brother, but he's an asshole. I'll help you." Jennifer started sending me screenshots of conversations that Dan mistakenly sent to the family group chat and then deleted. But Jennifer was quick enough to save them. There were messages like, "Maddie, can't make it tonight. Lauren is suspicious. She's looking at my phone too much. Tell her you have a house showing. I bought you that Michael Kors bag. Hid it in my car's glove compartment. Keys under the mat, as usual." I saved everything. I created a separate folder in the cloud. Named it, Recipes. No one snoops through other people's recipes. In there went restaurant receipts, geolocation screenshots. Roger taught me how to track his car through an app I secretly installed on his phone while he slept. Yes, it's illegal. Yes, I don't care. Recordings of conversations I made with an old Nokia voice recorder when he thought I was in the shower. One time I found a receipt from a jewelry store in his jacket pocket. Not a ring, but diamond earrings. For $3,000. A gift for his assistant. I photographed the receipt. Put it back. In May 2021, Dan said he had a company party in Las Vegas. The real estate firm was renting a bungalow at the Wynn. He'd be gone for 2 days. I smiled and said, "Great, honey, have some fun." That same evening, I called Roger and said, "Follow him. I need photos. Not just any photos. I need them to be high quality. Printable. Frameable." Roger came back with photos. They had everything. Dan and Madison by the pool. Dan and Madison in the room, through a gap in the curtains. Dan and Madison at dinner, where she was laughing and he was holding her hand. In one photo, Madison was sitting on his lap at the bar. She was wearing a dress I recognized from our closet. My dress, which had gone missing a month earlier. I thought I'd lost it at the dry cleaner. No, he gave it to his mistress. That's when I stopped crying. Hatred is a great antidepressant. I stopped feeling pain. I started feeling cold. Strategic cold. You know what's the funniest thing about infidelity? It always affects more people than you think. Madison wasn't alone. She had an ex-husband, Brandon. Brandon worked as a mechanic at an auto shop. He was a quiet guy with tattoos on his arms and perpetually greasy fingernails. I found him on Facebook through mutual friends, small town, yes. I sent him a message. "Hi, Brandon. This might seem strange. My name is Lauren. My last name is Hale. I'm Daniel Hale's wife. I have information that might interest you. We are both victims of the same people. If you want to talk, I'll be tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Grand Coffee Shop on 5th Avenue. I'll pay for your coffee." I wasn't sure he'd come. But he did. I recognized him immediately from his photos. He was a large man with tired eyes, wearing a worn leather jacket. He sat across from me, didn't order coffee, and asked, "What do you want?" I laid out the photos on the table. The ones Roger took in Vegas. Brandon looked at them for a minute. Then his face turned red. He clenched his fists so hard his knuckles went white. "That bitch," he whispered. "She told me she was going to her mother's in Phoenix. And she was, with your husband." "Yes," I said. "And she took my husband." "What did she take from you?" "My daughter," Brandon said. "Ella. She took my daughter. Said I was a bad father, that I drank. I don't drink at all. I joined 3 years ago. And the court believed her. Because I don't have money for a good lawyer. But her boyfriend, apparently, does." That's when I realized the scale of the disaster was bigger than I thought. Dan wasn't just fucking another man's wife. He was financing her court case against her husband. He was paying for the lawyer who took Brandon's daughter away. I looked Brandon in the eye and said, "I'll help you get your daughter back. If you help me destroy my husband." Brandon hesitated for a second. Then he reached out his hand. We shook hands in that coffee shop, to the sound of jazz and the smell of pastries. It was an alliance of two betrayed people. The strongest alliance I've ever known. The plan was complex. Brandon and I didn't just want a divorce. We wanted Dan and Madison to lose everything they had. Brandon wanted custody of Ella. I wanted the house, the money, and his real estate license. First, Brandon installed spyware on Madison's phone, when she left it unattended on a custody exchange day. By paying a darknet hacker $500, I don't ask how he found him. 3 days later, we had access to all her messages. And there was gold. Real gold. Madison was discussing with Dan how to steal my money. Quote, "Dan, Lauren has that inheritance from her grandmother, right? $50,000? Can't you convince her to invest it in your business project? Tell her it's a real estate investment. We'll just transfer it to my Cayman account later." Dan replied, "She's suspicious. But I'll try. She trusts me. I'll just have to pretend to love her again. Sleep with her a couple of times. It's disgusting, but what wouldn't you do for $50K? I read that message 10 times. Disgusting. He called me disgusting. The woman who changed his sheets every 3 days, who sterilized his razor, who cried on his shoulder when her mother died. I was disgusting to him. Brandon also found messages from Madison to her friend. Dan wants to leave Lauren but is afraid of losing the house. He says if he divorces, she'll get half, and he doesn't want to give her a cent. So he's waiting for Lauren to make a mistake. Maybe push her into cheating? Send some guy? They were planning to set me up. Hire an actor to seduce me and photograph it. Then use those photos in court as evidence of my infidelity. In Arizona, infidelity does affect property division. Not by a lot, but it does. They wanted every cent. That's when I said, enough. I called Samantha, my lawyer friend, and we started preparing the lawsuit. I chose the date, September 15, 2021. That day, Dan had a big deal, selling the mansion for $2.5 million. The commission was $150,000. If the deal fell through, his reputation would be ruined. I invited Brandon, his lawyer, 2 private investigators, Roger and his partner, and Dan's sister Jennifer. Yes, she was on my side. We gathered in the conference room of Samantha's office. At 10 a.m., while Dan was in negotiations with the buyers, an older couple from Texas, I sent him a message. Dan, emergency. Gas leak in the house. I called the gas company, but they can't enter without you. Need your signature. Come immediately. He couldn't ignore it. The house was our main asset. He apologized to the buyers and left. When he walked into the house, there was no gas smell. Instead, in the living room sat me, Samantha, Brandon, and Roger. On the table were folders of documents. 3 folders. What the hell? Dan asked. He was in his best suit, blue Brioni, Hermes tie. Looked like $1 million. Sit down, I said. We need to talk about the divorce. He laughed. Actually laughed. That condescending laugh that says, silly woman, you can't do anything to me. Lauren, are you freaking out again because I stayed late at work? Honey, we have a mortgage. Honey, I said, I know about Madison. I know about the apartment in Tucson. I know about the 50 grand you wanted to steal from me. I know about you calling me disgusting in a text. And I know about the plan to send an actor to seduce me. Dan's face changed. It turned ashen gray. He looked at Brandon. What are you doing here, mechanic? I'm here, Brandon said calmly, to get my daughter back. And thank you for financing her lawyer. The judge will be very interested to know where an unemployed hairdresser got $15,000 for legal fees. Dan tried to run. Roger blocked his way. Roger was a former cop, and he wasn't afraid of rich men in suits. You can't detain me, Dan shouted. We're not detaining you, Samantha said. We're just serving you with divorce papers. You are officially notified of the divorce proceedings. Also a civil lawsuit for $150,000 for emotional distress. And another lawsuit from Brandon Crowley for interference with family relations. That's a criminal offense in Arizona. Dan stood in the middle of the living room we had bought together, staring at me. In his eyes was fear. Real, primal fear. I had never seen him like that. Not even when he had a heart attack scare in 2018. You bitch, he whispered. You planned all this. I defended myself, I said. Those are different things. Go to your Madison. Say hi from me. Oh, and the dry cleaning receipt is on the table. That dress you gave her was mine. I want it back. The divorce lasted 8 months. 8 months of hearings, depositions, expert witnesses, and lies. Dan hired the best lawyer in Phoenix, some shark named Victoria Price, known for leaving husbands with nothing. But I had Samantha. And I had evidence. The first hearing was in October. Dan came with Madison. She sat in the gallery, dressed in a pink suit, perfect makeup. She looked at me with such contempt, as if I had stolen her husband. I looked at her hands. She was wearing the diamond earrings. The ones I had found the receipt for. Your Honor, Victoria Price began, my client claims that Mrs. Hale suffers from a mental disorder. She installed illegal listening devices, hacked a phone, stalked an innocent woman, Madison. That's a lie, I said. I have permission to install cameras in common areas of my own home. Arizona state law allows it if one party consents. I consented. To myself. And I didn't hack a phone. I received screenshots from Ms. Clark's ex-husband, who obtained them legally through a court order. Judge Morrison, an elderly black man with a face that had seen too many divorces, looked at me over his glasses. Mrs. Hale, Are you claiming your husband was planning to hide assets? I'm not claiming, Your Honor. I'm proving. Through Samantha, I submitted Dan's bank statements. They showed how, 3 months before I filed for divorce, he had transferred $42,000 to a bank account in the Cayman Islands. The account was opened in the name of Desert Sun Investments. The director of that company was Madison Clark. Dan's lawyer went pale. She didn't know. Dan had hidden it from his own lawyer. Idiot. Your Honor, Samantha said, this is not just asset concealment. This is grand fraud. We request that the respondent's accounts be frozen until the proceedings conclude. Judge Morrison nodded. He issued an order to freeze the accounts. Right there in the courtroom. Dan looked like he'd been electrocuted. His money, his precious accounts, his safety net, all gone in an instant. Madison jumped up from the bench. This isn't fair, she shouted. He promised me. He promised. Miss Clark, the judge said, if you don't sit down and shut your mouth, I'll have you removed by bailiffs. You are not a party to this case. She sat down, but she looked at me with such hatred that I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. But I didn't care. I had a plan. Remember that $50,000 inheritance from my grandmother? Dan wanted to steal it. But he didn't know one thing. My grandmother, Eleanor Baker, was not just a kind old lady who knitted socks. She was the daughter of a jeweler from Chicago. And she had a safe. Not the kind in the corner. A real one, at Chase Bank, that only opened with my fingerprint. When my grandmother died in 2019, she didn't leave me $50,000. She left me 3 things. A house in Ohio, which I sold for $120,000, a collection of antique coins, appraised at $80,000, and a packet of documents. In that packet was a will, handwritten in 1985, stating that all her assets go to me, Lauren Baker, and only me. Also a letter warning me, never sign a prenup, honey. And never invest your money in a man's projects. Men are bad investors. Dan thought that money was a myth. I hadn't told him about the safe. But when he started talking about real estate investments, I knew someone had talked. Someone in my family. It turned out to be my brother, Kevin, who was jealous of me and, in a drunken conversation, told Dan about Grandma's inheritance. Thanks, brother. You got yours too. I cut him out of my life, and he'll never see my future children. So in court, I presented documents showing that all my assets, about $250,000, were premarital and not subject to division. Dan tried to argue that I had invested that money in home improvements. But I had receipts clearly marked, bathroom renovation paid from Lauren Baker's premarital funds. I had been preparing for 3 years. 3 years of saving paperwork. The judge ruled in my favor. The sweetest moment came in December. Brandon won his custody case. The judge ruled that Madison Clark could not provide a stable environment for her daughter, as she was living on her lover's money while he was in the middle of a divorce with frozen assets. Ella went back to her father. I saw Brandon cry when the judge announced the decision. A big, tattooed mechanic crying like a baby. I cried too. Dan lost the $2.5 million deal. The Texas buyers backed out when they found out their agent was under investigation for fraud. Their lawyer called me, yes, they found my number, and said, we don't want to do business with a man who steals from his own wife. Dan's real estate license was suspended for 18 months. The Arizona Association of Realtors held an internal investigation. They found that he had used client accounts for personal expenses. Small amounts, $2 minus $3,000 here and there, but enough for disciplinary action. When the suspension ends, he can work again, but his reputation is destroyed. In the world of luxury real estate, reputation is everything. In January 2022, the final divorce hearing took place. The result? The house in Scottsdale stays with me. I bought out Dan's share for $150,000 from my premarital funds. He got a check for that amount. A check he couldn't cash because his accounts were frozen in another case. Irony. The Mercedes is sold, proceeds split 60/40 in my favor. Alimony. Yes, he pays me alimony. $1,800 a month for 3 years. Because I lost my TV job partly due to the stress caused by his infidelity, Samantha proved this through a psychologist. Emotional distress, $50,000, to be paid in installments. And most importantly, the judge ordered Dan to pay my legal fees. $28,000. When we walked out of the courtroom, Dan looked 60 years old. He was 39. His hair, which he always carefully styled, was sticking up in all directions. He came up to me. "You destroyed my life," he said quietly. "No, Dan," I replied. "You destroyed it yourself. I just picked up the pieces and built a new fortress. You're left in the ruins." Madison stood off to the side, smoking, even though it was forbidden on courthouse grounds. She looked at her phone. Then she looked up at Dan and said, "I'm leaving you. You're broke. You promised me a house, and now you live in some dump." "What dump?" Dan asked. "The apartment in Tucson you rented for me is a studio with bedbugs." "I found bedbugs, Dan. I'm not living with bedbugs." She turned and left. Dan stood alone, watching his ex-mistress drive away in a taxi. I got into my car, an old but reliable Subaru I bought before the marriage, and drove away. I didn't look back. It's now June 2024. I live in Scottsdale, in that same house Dan and I bought together. But now it's mine. I repainted the walls from beige to dark navy, the color of royal night, as I call it. I got rid of all his furniture, bought new Scandinavian-style pieces. In the living room is a huge bookshelf full of books Dan never read. He said books just collect dust. I have a garden where I grow tomatoes and basil. And I have Goodman, a corgi who sleeps on my lap as I write this post. I work. After the divorce, I couldn't go back to TV. I was eaten alive by young interns, but I found my niche in copywriting for real estate websites. I write honest descriptions of homes other agents are selling. My income has grown to $75,000 a year. It's not millions, but it's enough. I can afford to travel. Went to Portugal last year. Buy good wine without looking at the price tag. Dan? Oh, I have news about Dan. He's not a real estate agent. His license wasn't renewed after the investigation. He works as, ready? A delivery driver for Domino's Pizza. Yes, that same man who sold million-dollar homes now delivers pizza to addresses. And you know what? Sometimes he delivers to my neighborhood. I saw him once while sitting on my porch. He got out of his beat-up old Toyota Corolla. The Mercedes had to be sold, red Domino's bag in hand. He looked at my house, the new fence I put up, the lawn I grew. Our eyes met. I waved at him. He quickly looked away and walked off. I didn't feel sorry for him. Not one bit. He wanted to steal $50,000 from me, set me up with a fake affair, and leave me homeless. He got what he deserved. Madison? She moved to Florida. Works at a hair salon in Orlando. The court ordered her to pay child support to Brandon. She doesn't pay. She has a new boyfriend, some tattoo artist. Brandon is happy. He met a woman, a nurse named Carla. They live together, and Ella calls Carla, Mom. Brandon sends me Christmas cards. We're friends. Jennifer, Dan's sister, no longer speaks to her brother. She told him to his face, "You betrayed the best woman our family ever had." Jennifer and I meet once a month for brunch. She's my sister now, not his. My mother? Oh, Mom. She was horrified when she found out. But then she said, "Lauren, you're strong. Stronger than I ever was." My mother also went through a divorce from my father when he left for another woman when I was 12. I didn't want to repeat her fate. I wanted to write my own. If you've read this far, thank you. I know it's long, but if you're going through a divorce, infidelity, betrayal, I want to tell you a few things I learned the hard way. Don't believe words, believe actions. Dan said, "I love you," every day, even while planning to steal my money. Words mean nothing. Watch where the money goes, where he spends his time, how he treats his phone. Gather evidence immediately, even if you're not planning a divorce. Screenshot, save receipts, write down dates. It's not paranoia. It's insurance. Better to delete unnecessary evidence than to not have it when you need it. Don't seek revenge. Plan. Revenge is emotion. Emotion leads to mistakes. A plan is a cool head. I didn't take revenge on Dan. I defended myself. It just so happened that my defense included 150 pages of evidence and a civil lawsuit. Find allies. I couldn't have done it without Samantha, Jennifer, or Brandon. Loneliness is the enemy. Ask for help. People want to help. It makes them better. Don't be afraid to look like a bitch. People told me, "Don't be so harsh, you're humiliating him." He wanted to leave me homeless. Humiliation is the gentle punishment. I'm not a bitch. I'm fair. Divorce is not the end. It's an organ transplant. It hurts, it's scary, you're on the table, and you think you're going to die. But then you wake up. And you start breathing differently. Sometimes easier. This morning, I got a text from an unknown number. It's Dan. I know you hate me. But I'm sick. Hepatitis C. I need treatment. Please, Lauren, you're the only one with money. I didn't reply. I looked at Goodman, who was chewing my new slipper. Then at the sun rising over the Scottsdale Mountains. Then at my hand, no longer wearing a wedding ring, just the watch I bought myself for my birthday. I typed, Dan, your health is your responsibility. Just like your life. I hope you find help. But not from me. And sent it. Blocked the number. Finished my coffee. And started writing this post. Thank you, Reddit. Thank you for listening. If you're going through a divorce, message me. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a therapist. But I'm a woman who went through hell and came back to tell about it. And yes, Goodman just pooped on the rug. Some things never change, even after victory. Story 3. My name is Mark. I'm 32. I live in Naperville, a suburb of Chicago. I've worked as a logistician at an auto parts factory called Visco Corporation for 8 years. The job is boring but stable. The pay is good, and my boss, Mike, is a guy with a temper but fair. I don't complain. My ex-wife, Jessica, is 30. We met in our junior year at the University of Illinois. She was a quiet honors student from the marketing department. She wore thick-rimmed glasses, was embarrassed by her smile, and always covered her mouth when she laughed. I thought it was cute. I still do, but now that memory is poisoned. My former best friend, Kyle, is 33. We met freshman year when we were assigned as roommates in the dorm. He played guitar, listened to indie rock, and constantly got into trouble with girls. I was his opposite, calm, level-headed, loving football and video games. But we complemented each other. He taught me not to be afraid of looking foolish. I taught him how to pass exams. Kyle and I went through a lot together. When his girlfriend dumped him sophomore year, I listened to his drunken sobs for 3 nights straight. When my grandmother died, he drove 500 miles with me to the funeral, even though he barely knew her. When I was almost expelled for missing too many classes, I had pneumonia, he went to the dean and begged him to give me a second chance. He was my brother, not by blood, but by everything that matters. I introduced him to Jessica a year after we started dating. The 3 of us went to a bar. Kyle was tense at first. He always got jealous when I brought new people into our circle. But Jessica quickly found a way in. She asked about his guitar and asked him to play something. He played Wonderwall. Yeah, cliché, but she laughed. After that, he told me, she's okay. Don't screw this up. 2 years into our relationship, I proposed to Jessica. We went to New Orleans. I got down on one knee on the Riverwalk at sunset. She cried. She said, yes, before I even opened the ring box. I called Kyle immediately. He shouted into the phone, finally. I'm tired of being the third wheel. We laughed. The wedding was a year later. Modest, 80 guests, a country club, no excess. Kyle was the best man. He gave a toast that I remember verbatim to this day. Mark and Jessica are my 2 favorite people in the world. I'm glad I don't have to choose between them. Now I can love them both without having to pick one. Everyone cried. My mom hugged him and said, "You're our 3rd son." He smiled. I didn't know that 3 years later, those words would become the biggest nightmare of my life. We bought a house in Naperville. A 3-bedroom ranch with a big backyard. The mortgage was manageable. We both earned good money. Jessica worked as a project coordinator at a pharmaceutical company called Merck in North Chicago. I worked in the suburbs, so my commute was shorter. We got a dog, a corgi named Beaver. He got that name because as a puppy, he constantly fell into his water bowl and snorted like a beaver. Beaver became our shared child. We weren't in a hurry to have real kids. We wanted to get on our feet first. Kyle worked remotely for an IT company that handled cloud solutions for small businesses. His office was at home, so he often came over to our place. He said he got lonely at home alone, but our place was cozy. I was happy. I liked that Jessica wasn't bored alone while I was at work. I'd get home around 7 p.m. I'd often find them on the couch in front of the TV. They were watching shows I couldn't stand, Grey's Anatomy, Billions, Succession. Jessica drank wine, Kyle drank beer, Beaver dozed at their feet. Jessica would get up, kiss me, and go reheat dinner. Kyle would pat me on the shoulder and say, "So, bro, how's the factory?" We'd have dinner together. We'd talk about work, politics, what was happening in the world. Kyle complained about his colleagues, I complained about my boss Mike, Jessica talked about the new drugs her company was developing. It was idyllic. I felt like the luckiest man on earth. The first warning bell rang 2 years into the marriage. Jessica started acting weird about her phone. Before, she could leave it on the kitchen table and go take a shower. Now she took it with her even to the bathroom. I joked, "Are you hiding someone?" She laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. She said her company had a new boss, a tyrant who wrote at all hours, and she didn't want me to see those messages and get upset for her. I believed her. I had no reason not to. The second warning bell, Kyle stopped talking about women. Before, he constantly complained about Tinder, showed me photos of his disastrous dates, asked for advice. He was candid to a fault. Then he suddenly went quiet. I asked, "Did you find someone?" He waved it off. "No, I'm just tired of it. All those dates are a waste of time. I'm focusing on work and myself." I patted him on the back and said, "That's right, bro. You first, then everyone else." He looked at me strangely, then glanced at Jessica, who had just walked in with a cup of coffee, and smiled. At the time, I thought, he's jealous of our happiness. Idiot. There was no third bell. Because the next sound was an explosion. Every year, my company throws a party. Usually it's a boring event in a conference room with tasteless canapes and a speech from the CEO who makes jokes about KPIs. But this year, our CFO, Marge, decided to splurge. She rented a loft in downtown Chicago, hired a professional photographer, and announced a Great Gatsby-themed party. Open bar, jazz band, dress code, 1920s. Jessica loved themes like this. She bought a gold-fringed dress, long gloves, did her hair in finger waves, and wore dark lipstick. She looked like a silent film star. I wore a dark blue three-piece suit, a vest, and suspenders. We looked like we stepped off a magazine cover. Kyle asked to come along. A week before the event, he said, "Mark, take me with you. I'm bored alone. I want to see your logistician colleagues, the ones you describe as the most boring people on earth." I laughed and said, "Come on. Just don't say I didn't warn you about my boss, Mike." Kyle laughed. The evening started normally. We arrived around 8. I introduced Jessica to Mike. Mike looked at her, then at me, and said, "Mark, how did you manage that? A woman like that? With you? You must have something I don't see." Jessica blushed and said, "He has a kind heart." Mike grunted and walked away. Kyle arrived a little later with a bottle of Johnny Walker Black Label, even though the bar was free. He was already a bit tipsy, his eyes were red, his speech slightly slurred. I didn't think much of it. Kyle always had a strong tolerance, and he could afford one night of indulgence. Around 10 o'clock, I went to the bathroom. The loft was arranged so the restrooms were in a long hallway behind the main area. I went into a stall, did my business, came out to wash my hands. I looked in the mirror. The suit fit perfectly, but my eyes had this emptiness. The kind of tiredness that doesn't go away even after vacation. I stepped into the hallway. And then I heard a sound. Something between a sob and a giggle. The sound came from a nook behind a fire safety panel. I didn't want to spy. I'm generally not one for other people's secrets. But I recognized that laugh. It was Jessica's laugh. Her special, low, throaty laugh that only came out when she was very turned on or very drunk and happy. My insides turned to ice. I walked over quietly. On tiptoes, I peered around the panel. Kyle stood with Jessica pressed against the wall. One hand was on her waist, the other in her hair. That perfect hairdo she'd spent 2 hours on. She had her arms wrapped around his neck. They were kissing, not just touching lips. Deeply, greedily, with tongue. The way people kiss who have done it 1,000 times and know exactly how to please each other. I stood there for 3 seconds. Maybe 5. My heart first stopped, then started pounding so hard I thought my eardrums would burst. Then came the anger. Cold, quiet, like liquid nitrogen in my veins. I didn't shout. I didn't lunge at him. I pulled out my phone. I recorded them. 30 seconds. Close up. Faces, hands, the dress. They were so lost in each other they didn't notice the flash. I put my phone away, turned, and went back to the bathroom. I sat on the toilet lid. I sat there staring at a single spot on the tile wall. Fragments swirled in my head. Every evening they watched shows together, every Sunday morning I went fishing, every time he slept over on the couch. I remembered once finding his sneakers in the hallway closet. He said he'd forgotten them last time. I remembered coming home from work 2 hours early once and the bedroom door being locked. Jessica said she was changing and didn't want me to see her in her lounge clothes. I remembered her taking her phone into the shower. I realized I had been a blind idiot. I realized my life had been a lie. I splashed ice water on my face, straightened myself up, looked in the mirror. My eyes were red, but I pulled myself together. I went back to the main hall. Jessica and Kyle were already there, keeping their distance. Jessica stood at the bar, sipping a mojito. Kyle chatted with my colleague Steve about cryptocurrency. I walked up to Jessica, put my arm around her waist. She smelled of the same Chanel No. 5 she always wore. I kissed her on the cheek. She smiled. Genuinely. Her tongue had just been in my best friend's mouth, and she smiled at me. "Your lips are shiny," I said. "It's lip gloss, honey," she said, not missing a beat. "You were gone so long. I was about to come looking for you. I ran into an old friend," I said. We got to talking. I waited another hour. I was polite. I laughed at Mike's jokes. I had a bourbon with Kyle. We clinked glasses. He said, "To best friends." I said, "To honesty." He didn't understand, just nodded. Jessica looked at him when he turned his back to me. I saw it out of the corner of my eye. She looked at him with longing. In the taxi, she put her head on my shoulder. "You're the best husband in the world, Mark," she said. "I know," I answered. She didn't notice the bitterness in my voice. Or she pretended not to. At home, I waited until she fell asleep. She fell asleep quickly. The exhaustion and alcohol took over. She turned her back to me and started breathing steadily. I waited another 20 minutes. Then I picked up her phone. It lay on the nightstand, screen up. The passcode was our wedding date, 1509. September 15th. She hadn't changed it. Smart, right? I opened the phone. I went through the apps. Messages, clean. WhatsApp, clean. Telegram, clean. But I knew iPhones have a hidden chats feature in iMessage. I started searching. I went into settings, then into hidden contacts. After 5 minutes, I found an archive folder. Inside was a chat labeled Kate. Kate was the name of her older sister, who lived in Ohio. We saw her once a year on Thanksgiving. They had a normal but not especially close relationship. I thought, weird that she's messaging her sister this much. I opened the chat. It was Kyle. The conversation had started over a year ago. Kyle's first message. He left for Detroit. Coffee? Jessica's reply. Waiting. I started scrolling up. I read their entire conversation that night. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the phone in my hands and read as my life was taken apart piece by piece. Thousands of messages. Hundreds of photos. Dozens of videos. They discussed me. My habits. My job. My appearance. My flaws. Jessica wrote. Mark has become boring. He comes home from work, turns on football, and falls asleep on the couch. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He doesn't want sex as often as before. Kyle replied, "You deserve better. You deserve someone who's on the same wavelength as you. You deserve me." They discussed where to meet. My living room when I was at work. My bedroom when I went fishing. Hotels in neighboring towns. Parking lots at supermarkets. They had code words. Reading a book meant having sex. Watching a movie meant just sitting together and talking. Washing the car meant meeting in my garage. They planned the future. Kyle wrote, "I want you to have my baby. We'll call him Kyle Jr. Or if it's a girl, after my mom." Jessica replied, "You're insane. Mark wants kids. I can't do that." Kyle. "Then tell him you're infertile. I'll pay for the clinic. We'll move to Wisconsin, buy a lake house. Live like real people." They wrote to each other every day. Every night while I slept. Every morning while I showered. They exchanged photos. Her in lingerie. Him in the shower. Pictures of their breakfasts at cafes I'd never been to. Photos of their legs under the same table. The worst message I found deep in the history. Kyle wrote, "Remember when we fucked in his bed when he was fishing? I didn't wash the sheets on purpose. I wanted him to smell me." Jessica replied with an emoji. I took screenshots. Page after page. I sent them to my email, to a USB stick, to the cloud, to an external hard drive in my safe. I copied all the photos, all the videos. I found a video they'd made in my shower. I couldn't watch more than 5 seconds. I turned it off and kept copying. I put the phone back at 4 a.m. I didn't sleep until dawn. I sat in the living room, stroking Beaver, staring out the window. Beaver whimpered and licked my hands. Even the dog knew something was wrong. I thought, what did I do wrong? Why did she choose him? Why did he betray me? I found no answers. I only found anger. In the morning, I didn't go to work. I said I wasn't feeling well. Jessica went to the office, kissing me on the forehead. She was tender. She was caring. She was a liar. I waited until her car pulled away, then went to see a lawyer. I found Angie Coleman online. She was the best divorce attorney in Chicago and the suburbs. Her rating was 4.9 out of 5. Reviews said, "Iron lady, shark in a skirt, she'll leave your ex-husband in tears." That worked for me. I scheduled a consultation. The fee was $500 an hour. I paid it without hesitation. I went to her office downtown. She greeted me in a dark blue suit, short hair, thin-rimmed glasses. She looked at me over the glasses and said, "Sit down, Mark. Tell me everything." I put a folder on the table. Screenshots, printouts, a USB drive with video. She took the folder, opened it, and started reading. She read silently for about 20 minutes. Sometimes she shook her head. Sometimes she grunted. Then she looked at me. "Mark, you've come to me with a goldmine. Illinois doesn't criminalize infidelity, but in civil proceedings, this gives you all the leverage. We can file for an at-fault divorce. We can sue the lover for emotional distress. We can keep the house if we prove it was bought before the marriage. We can keep the car. She'll pay you alimony if your income is lower." "My income is lower by $15K a year," I said. "Then she'll pay you," Angie smiled. "Not a huge amount, but humiliating for her." "What do I need to do?" I asked. "You need to be the perfect husband until we file. No scandals. No accusations. You need to keep gathering evidence. Cameras in the house. Legal if they're in common areas. Recording conversations. Legal if you're a participant. A GPS tracker on her car. Legal if the car is marital property." "Got it," I said. "One more thing," Angie said. "Don't tell anyone. Not friends, not relatives, except the very few you trust 100%. The fewer people who know, the less chance it leaks to them." "Understood," I said. I left Angie's office feeling like I had a plan. It was the only thing keeping me afloat. The next 6 months were the hardest of my life. I had to smile at Jessica, kiss her, tell her I loved her, have sex with her. Yes, it was disgusting, but I did it to avoid suspicion. I had to hug Kyle when he came over, shake his hand, call him my brother. Inside, I was boiling. I wanted to tear them apart. But I held myself together. I installed a camera in the living room. A tiny one, the size of a battery, disguised as a smoke detector. I bought it online for $200. It recorded high-quality video and transmitted it to my computer over Wi-Fi. I installed a GPS tracker under the bumper of Jessica's car. A little black box that ran on a battery and sent coordinates to my phone. I could see where she was in real time. I installed spy software on Jessica's laptop. She gave me the password herself when I said I was cleaning viruses off it. Actually, I installed a keylogger and a screenshot program. Every 3 days, I downloaded the data and sent it to Angie. Jessica noticed nothing. On the contrary, she became more affectionate. She thought I knew nothing, and she tried to compensate for her guilt with tenderness. She cooked my favorite meals. She bought me gifts. She said she loved me. Every time she said it, I remembered the shower video. I remembered her moaning under Kyle. I wanted to rip my own tongue out so I wouldn't have to say, "I love you too." I became better. I brought flowers. I cooked dinners. I gave compliments. I bought her diamond earrings for our 3rd anniversary. She cried with tenderness. And that same night, she texted Kyle. "Mark bought me diamond earrings." "I feel like shit." Kyle replied, "It's manipulation. He senses you pulling away, and he's trying to buy you back. Don't fall for it." She didn't fall for it. 2 days later, they met again in a hotel. I knew because I saw the GPS. I knew which hotel. I knew which room. I knew how long they stayed. I logged everything in an Excel spreadsheet. Date, time, hotel, duration. It was my therapy, turning pain into data. 3 months into my surveillance, a moment happened that I'll never forget. I came home from work an hour early. I'd finished a report faster than expected. I stopped at the store, bought beer and steaks. I thought we'd have dinner together, as usual. I walked into the house. Silence. Beaver didn't run to greet me, so he was in the yard or the bedroom. I put the bags on the kitchen counter and heard sounds. Muffled. From the guest bedroom. I walked to the door. It was locked from inside. I listened. It was Jessica's voice. And Kyle's. I couldn't make out the words, but the intonations left no doubt. I didn't knock. I didn't kick the door in. I just said loudly, "Jess, you home?" Silence for 5 seconds. Then rustling. Then Jessica's voice. "Yeah, honey, I'm just changing." "Open up," I said. "In a minute." Another 2 minutes passed. Maybe 3. The door opened. Jessica stood in a bathrobe, her hair wet, as if she'd just gotten out of the shower. Kyle sat on the edge of the bed in jeans and a t-shirt. His jeans were unbuttoned. His t-shirt was on backwards. "Oh, hey, Kyle," I said in the calmest voice I could manage. "I thought you were working today." "Yeah, I just stopped by for a bit," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Jessica said she'd give me your old game console." "Which one?" I asked. PlayStation 4, he said. "I don't own a PlayStation 4. I own an Xbox Series S." He should have known that. He'd played on it 100 times. "Right, of course," I said. "Jess, did you find it?" "Yeah, here it is," she said, pointing with a trembling hand to a box for some kind of electronics sitting in the corner. The box was dusty. I'd never seen it before. I picked up the box. Opened it. Inside was an old toaster. Rusty. With a broken handle. "Great console," I said. "Kyle, is this really what you wanted?" "Yeah, sure," he said, standing up, grabbing the box, and practically running out of the room. "Thanks, bro. I'll call you." He left. I heard the front door slam. Jessica stared at the floor. "You look pale," I said. "Headache," she said. "Probably a migraine." "Get some rest," I said, and walked to the kitchen. I sat at the table and clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. I was 2 feet away from killing them both. But I remembered Angie's advice, not yet. Let them hang themselves. I exhaled, unclenched my fists, opened a beer. I checked the camera footage that evening. The living room camera didn't see into the bedroom, but it saw the hallway. I watched Kyle enter the house at 2 p.m. Jessica greeting him in just a robe. Them kissing right by the door. Walking to the guest bedroom. Closing the door. Emerging 2 hours later. Jessica fixing her hair. Kyle zipping his pants. I saved the footage. Sent it to Angie. She replied, "Excellent. A few more like that, and we file." 6 months after the company party, I had a 300-page folder. Videos, audio, screenshots, GPS logs, witness statements. I'd found a maid at one of the hotels who remembered them because they'd left the room in a horrible state. Wine-stained sheets, towels on the floor, cigarette burns on the windowsill. Angie said, "Mark, it's time. We file on Friday." I chose Saturday for the confrontation. I knew they were planning to meet Saturday at the Drake Hotel downtown. I knew the room, 412. I knew the time, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I knew because I'd read their texts. Friday night, I told Jessica, "I have urgent work tomorrow." My boss called. "A project is on fire. I'll be in the office all day." "That's too bad," she said. "I'll go see my mom then. I haven't seen her in a while." "Sure, say hi for me," I said. She didn't go see her mom. Saturday, 8 a.m. I didn't go to work. I drove to her parents' house. Patricia and Robert are good people. Retirees. Robert is a former military officer, a retired lieutenant colonel. Patricia is a former nurse. They'd always treated me like a son. I arrived with flowers and a box of chocolates. They were surprised. "Mark, what's wrong?" Patricia asked. "You look exhausted." "Something's wrong," I said. "And you're not going to like it. But you need to hear it from me, not from the neighbors." I sat on the couch. Turned on my laptop. Showed them the video from the company party. Showed them screenshots of the messages. Showed them the living room camera footage. Showed them photos from the hotel. Patricia cried. First quietly, then out loud. Robert turned white. He stood up, went to the kitchen, and smashed a coffee mug. I heard the glass shatter on the floor. "Is that the same Kyle?" he asked hoarsely, coming back into the room. "The same one," I said. "My best friend. Best man at our wedding." "I'll kill him," Robert said. "I served in the army. I know how to make sure nobody finds the body." "Don't," I said. "Justice will be different. I've filed for divorce. She's going to pay me alimony. He's going to pay compensation. They'll lose their jobs. They'll lose everything." "Are you sure?" Robert asked. "I'm sure," I said. Patricia hugged me. She was crying and saying, "You're our son. You always will be. We don't excuse her. We don't excuse what she did." I left an hour later. Next stop. Brenda, Kyle's mother. Brenda lived 20 minutes from Naperville, in a little house with a garden. She was a widow. Her husband had died of pancreatic cancer 5 years earlier. Kyle was her only child. She adored him. She also adored me. I helped her with repairs, fixed her computer, mowed her lawn, drove her to doctor's appointments when Kyle was busy. She called me her second son. I arrived at her place at 10 a.m. She was having coffee on the porch. She saw my face and immediately knew something was wrong. "Mark, you're scaring me," she said. "Come in. Sit down. What's happened?" "Brenda, sit down," I said. "I need to show you something. And it's going to hurt." I turned on my laptop. I showed her the same things I'd shown Jessica's parents. The party video, the message screenshots, the camera footage, the photos. Brenda didn't cry. She froze. She sat there, staring at the screen, her face growing whiter and whiter. She gripped her coffee mug so hard I thought it would crack. "My son," she said quietly. "My only son. Your son slept with my wife for a year and a half," I said. "In my house. In my bed. While I was at work. While I thought he was my brother. I will never call him my son again," Brenda said. "You are my son, Mark. You." She stood up, went inside, and came back with her phone. She called her estate lawyer. I heard her side of the conversation. "George, it's Brenda. Take Kyle out of my will. Completely. Not a cent. Not the house. Not the car. Nothing. I'm leaving everything to Mark." "Yes, Mark. That Mark. Do it today." She hung up and looked at me. "I didn't ask you to do that," I said. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm doing it." 11 a.m. I pull up to the hotel. Park. Walk into the lobby. Take the elevator to the 4th floor. Walk down the hallway. The carpet muffles my footsteps. I stop in front of room 412. I knock. Silence. Then rustling. Then Kyle's voice. "Who is it?" "Housekeeping," I say. The door opens. Kyle stands in the doorway in just his boxers. His eyes go wide. He tries to close the door, but I've already got my foot in. "Mark?" His voice cracks. It's not what you think." "Really?" I say calmly. "Because I think you're fucking my wife in a hotel while I'm supposed to be at work." I push past him into the room. Jessica sits on the bed, wrapped in a sheet. Her face is white as paper. She looks at me like she's seen a ghost. "Mark," she starts. "It didn't mean anything. It was just sex. I only love you." "Shut up," I say. "I didn't come here to listen to excuses. I came to deliver documents." I pulled 3 envelopes out of my backpack. Red envelopes. I bought red ones on purpose. "This is for you." I throw one to Jessica. She catches it with trembling hands. Court summons. At fault divorce. The copy is already filed in Cook County Court. You'll get the official notice on Tuesday. "This is for you." I throw the second to Kyle. He stares at it like it's a snake. "Lawsuit for emotional distress and marital funds you squandered. The amount is $75,000. You'll be paying me until you're 40. And this," I hold up the 3rd envelope, "is a copy for your employers. I haven't decided whether to send it yet. But if you make the divorce difficult or try to contest anything, I will. And you will both lose your jobs." Kyle lunges at me. He tries to grab the envelope. I step back. I'm 4 inches taller and 40 pounds heavier. I wrestled in college. He didn't. I wouldn't, I say. "Copies are with my lawyer. And with my mom. And with your mom, Kyle." "Yeah, Brenda knows everything. And she's cursed you. She took you out of her will." Kyle stops. His face turns gray. "You're lying," he says. "Call her," I say. "Just don't be surprised when she doesn't answer." Jessica falls to her knees. Right on the hotel carpet. In the sheet. She's sobbing. "Mark, please," she says. "I'll do anything. I'll leave him. I'll go to a therapist. We can fix this. We can go to a marriage counselor." "We?" I repeat. "There is no we. You killed us a year and a half ago." "A year and a half, Jessica. 548 days. You lied to me for 548 days. You lied to me when I kissed you goodnight. You lied to me when I brought you flowers. You lied to me when I paid for this hotel with my own work. You don't deserve a second chance. You deserve what you're going to get." I turn and walk out. I don't look back. I hear Jessica screaming after me, "Mark, come back." I hear Kyle saying, "Shut up, this is your fault." I hear them arguing. I close the elevator door and exhale. I don't feel relief. I feel emptiness. The divorce lasted 8 months. 8 months of hell. Jessica hired an expensive lawyer from downtown Chicago. A woman named Valerie Hayes who specialized in complex divorces. Valerie tried to portray me as an emotionally cold husband who forced his wife to seek warmth elsewhere. She argued in court that I didn't pay Jessica enough attention, that I worked 12-hour days, that I pulled away from her. But I had the party video. I had the message logs. I had the camera footage. I had the maid's testimony. I had the GPS tracker. I had the Excel spreadsheet with dates and times. The judge was a woman. Her name was Margaret Chong. She was 60 years old, originally from Taiwan, and had a reputation as tough but fair. She looked at Jessica, then at me, then at Kyle. He was called as a witness. She looked at them with such contempt that I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Judge Chong said, "Ms. Hayes, your arguments about Mr. Harris' coldness are shattered by the irrefutable evidence of systematic marital infidelity by his wife. I find no basis for your claims. On the contrary, I grant the plaintiff's requests. The outcome: the house stays with Mark, bought before marriage. The car, 2021 Toyota Camry, stays with Jessica, but she pays the loan. Alimony: Jessica pays Mark $800 per month for 2 years. Emotional damages from Kyle, $15,000, paid at $200 per month for 75 months. The dog, Beaver, stays with Mark. Jessica didn't even fight for him. Court costs: Jessica and Kyle pay 80%. Jessica cried in the courtroom. Kyle sat with a stone face. I looked straight ahead. When it was over, Jessica approached me in the courthouse hallway. "Mark, can we talk?" "No," I said. "Please, just 1 minute." "You had your minute. 1.5 years of lies. I won't give you another second." I walked away. But the main event happened after the divorce. 3 weeks after the court's decision took effect, I made an anonymous post on a Chicago local forum. I asked lawyers for advice about emotional distress damages. And I attached screenshots of the messages with faces and names blurred. The post went viral. 50,000 people read it in 2 days. Someone from Jessica's workplace recognized the details, the hotel, the dates, the code words. A week later, Jessica was called into our. It turned out her work messages, where she discussed having sex with Kyle during work hours, had been found by the company's IT department. I had made an anonymous tip to corporate ethics. Yes, that was me. I sent screenshots to a fake email address at compliance@merck.com. Jessica was fired for violation of corporate ethics and misuse of company resources for personal purposes. She lost a $120,000 salary. She lost health insurance. She lost her bonuses. Kyle was also fired. His company was stricter. He'd used his work laptop to store intimate photos of Jessica. That's a direct security violation. Plus, his boss, Tom, turned out to be friends with my boss, Mike. Yes, I called Mike. I told him the truth. He said, "I always knew that guy was shady. I'll call Tom tonight." A month after being fired, Kyle moved into a trailer park with his uncle in Gary, Indiana. Gary is one of the most depressed cities in the Midwest. Factories closed, unemployment sky high. He lived in a trailer with his uncle Bob, who drank and bet on horse races. Jessica moved in with her friend Sarah, but Sarah kicked her out after 3 weeks. I had called Sarah, we were friends, and told her the truth. Sarah said, "I don't want a woman like that living in my house. My kids shouldn't see this." Jessica ended up homeless. She rented a room in some hostel on the south side of Chicago, a neighborhood where shootings happen every night. She called me every night. I blocked numbers. She changed numbers. I blocked again. She wrote letters. Dozens of letters. In one letter, she wrote, "Kyle left me. He said I'm sick and that I seduced him. Is that true? Mark, answer me. I'm going crazy. I don't know who I am without you." I didn't answer. A year after the divorce, I received an envelope. Not email. Paper. An envelope made of thick, expensive paper with flourishes. The return address: Pine Grove Psychiatric Clinic, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I opened it. Inside was a letter. 6 pages. Jessica's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. Neat, slanted to the right. Here's what she wrote, I'm paraphrasing, but nearly verbatim. "Mark, I know you hate me. You have the right. You have the right to any hatred you feel. But I need to tell you something. Something I hid all these years. Something that makes me not just a betrayer, but an idiot. I'm sick. I have bipolar I disorder with manic episodes and psychotic features. I was diagnosed 6 months before I started seeing Kyle. I spent 3 weeks in a clinic in Milwaukee. They prescribed lithium and antipsychotics. I took them for 3 months. Then I stopped because they kept me from gaining weight. Because they made me feel flat. Because I wanted to be pretty for you. Stupid, right? Kyle knew about my illness. I told him at the very beginning. He said it didn't matter. He said I was unique. He said my manic phases made me free and passionate. He encouraged me to take risks. He told me to let myself go. He discouraged me from taking my meds. He said, "You don't need that chemistry. You're beautiful as you are." I'm not excusing myself. I'm guilty. I should have told you. I should have continued treatment. I should have listened to you instead of him. But I was weak. I liked feeling desired. I liked him telling me I was special. I forgot that what made me special was you. Your care, your love, your patience. I'm now at Pine Grove Clinic. I've been here 3 months. I'm in intensive therapy. I'm taking my meds. I go to group sessions. I'm writing this letter as part of forgiveness therapy. My therapist says I need to apologize to those I've hurt, without expecting a response. I don't expect you to respond. I don't expect you to forgive. I don't expect a second chance. I only want you to know the truth. So you don't think I was just evil or lustful. I was sick. And I let another sick person, Kyle. He has narcissistic personality disorder. I found out later, use my illness against you and against me. When I'm discharged, in 2 months, I won't look for you. I'll move to Ohio to live with my sister. Find a job, take my meds, try to become the person I should have been. But if you ever want to talk, I'll be waiting. Jessica. I read that letter 5 times. Then 10. I sat at the kitchen table, holding it in my hands, staring at the wall. I called my psychologist, Dr. Reynolds. He said, "Mark, don't answer immediately. Give yourself time. This could be manipulation, or it could be the truth. But you're not obligated to do anything." I called Angie Coleman. She said, "Mark, from a legal standpoint, you're better off not contacting her. It could affect the alimony." I called my mother. She said, "Son, you decide for yourself. But remember, forgiveness isn't for her. Forgiveness is for you." I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I checked. I found an old friend who works as a psychiatrist at the Mayo Clinic. I asked him to make a confidential inquiry. 2 days later, he called back. "Mark, it's true. Jessica was in a psychiatric clinic in Milwaukee 6 months before the affair started. Diagnosis: bipolar I disorder. She had inpatient treatment for 3 weeks. She was discharged with a recommendation to take lithium. According to the records, she stopped taking it after 4 months. I found a message in the chat that I'd missed the first time. Kyle wrote, "Did you take your vitamins today?" Jessica: "No. With them I feel like a zombie. With you I feel alive." Kyle: "Then don't take them. I love you the way you are." I understood. He knew. He knew she was sick. He knew her mania made her hypersexual and reckless. He knew she wasn't in control of herself. And he used it. He took her off her meds. He turned her illness into his entertainment. I sat and stared at the wall for 2 hours. My hatred for Jessica began to turn into exhaustion, into pity, into disgust for Kyle. But she was still guilty. She could have told me. She could have asked for help. She could have continued treatment. Instead, she chose sex and adventure. I wrote her a short letter. I sent it to Pine Grove by certified mail. Here's what I wrote. "Jessica, I know about the diagnosis. I checked. It's true. I'm sorry you didn't trust me back then. I'm sorry you trusted him. I'm sorry you quit your meds. I'm sorry you chose him over me. I don't forgive you. Maybe someday I will, but not now. Right now, I only feel emptiness and fatigue. I don't wish you ill. I wish you recovery. Find a job, live a normal life, but don't look for me. When you get out, I don't exist for you. Don't call, don't write, don't come by. I wish you peace. Mark." I sent that letter. And I closed that chapter. Today is Friday, 8 p.m. I'm sitting on the porch of my house. Beaver is sleeping at my feet. I'm drinking a beer and watching the sunset. Next month, I'm selling this house. Too many memories. I bought a little house in Michigan, on Lake Michigan. A small town of 3,000 people. There's nothing there but woods, water, and silence. That's what I need. Kyle still writes to me from fake accounts. The latest message was yesterday. "You ruined my life, asshole. I hope you rot. Your wife was sucking me off while you were on business trips. Every time you called me, I had just come inside her. Think about that when you go to sleep. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot and sent it to Brenda. She said, I've taken him out of my will. And I've filed a police report for threats. Let him try again. Brenda came to see me last week. We had tea and looked at old photos. She cried. I cried. Then we laughed. She said, you're my son. You always were. And you always will be. I said, thank you, Mom. I don't feel relief. Revenge didn't bring me happiness. It brought me a house, a dog, money, and peace. But there's still a hole in my chest. I see a psychologist once a week. I run in the mornings. I started going to the gym. I even went on one date, a woman named Lauren, a nurse. But I told her I wasn't ready. She said, you're too glassy. You look through me, not at me. She was right. I don't know when I'll be ready. Maybe in a year. Maybe in 5. Maybe never. Jessica was discharged from the clinic 2 months ago. She moved to Ohio with her sister. I know because Brenda told me. She ran into Patricia, Jessica's mother, at the grocery store. Patricia said Jessica is taking her meds, going to therapy, and working remotely for some small marketing company. She's not drinking, not seeing men, living quietly. I'm glad for her. I really am, but I don't want to see her. Beaver just sneezed in his sleep. He's so funny. He's the only one who never betrayed me. He's the only one who looks at me the same way on good days and bad. I wrote this story so someone might read it and understand. Infidelity isn't always black and white. Sometimes it's about illness. Sometimes it's about manipulation. Sometimes it's about weakness. Sometimes it's about pain that stays with you forever. I won in court. I won in life. But I lost my faith in people. Don't cheat. If you're unhappy, leave. If you need help, ask. If you're sick, get treatment. Don't hurt the people who trust you with the keys to their lives. Peace to everyone. Mark. Story 4. Hi, Reddit. I'm Ellie, I'm 34, but after everything that's happened, I feel 90. I'm a mother of 2, an interior designer in suburban Austin, Texas, and the ex-wife of a man I now call Mark with a capital Psycho. Let me start from the beginning so you understand why I didn't leave at the first red flag. I met Mark Thompson when I was 22. I had just graduated college with a degree in environmental design, working as an assistant at a small studio, living in a tiny apartment with a roommate who constantly stole my milk. Mark was 24 then. He worked as a junior financial analyst at some company whose name I've already forgotten. We met at his cousin's wedding to my friend. Sounds like a cliché, right? He came up to me while I was trying to scrape dried barbecue sauce off my shoe. Not the most romantic moment. But he just laughed, pulled out a wet wipe, and said, let me guess, you're the girl who never carries napkins because she thinks the world should be safe for white shoes. I fell in love that second. Not with his looks, though he was handsome, dark hair, gray eyes, 6 feet 2 inches, but with his way of noticing details. He seemed attentive, caring, not like the guys on Tinder who send unsolicited pics. We dated for 3 years. He never raised his voice at me. He remembered that I liked coffee with hazelnut syrup and that I hated when people touched my blueprints without asking. He gave me a set of professional markers for sketching the first Christmas we were together. I thought, this is it. This is the man of my dreams. We got married when I was 25. The wedding was small but beautiful. In his parents' garden. Now I know they weren't his real parents, but more on that later. My dress was off the shoulder. He cried when he saw me in it. Parents cried. The neighbor cried. Everyone cried. I felt like a princess. The first years of marriage were good. Not perfect, but good. We argued about where to hang a shelf or about me taking too long to pick out wallpaper. But we always made up the same day. Mark would kiss my forehead and say, we're a team, Ellie. A team doesn't give up. Then Sophie was born. That was 2018. I remember holding her in my arms, tiny, red, little fists clenched, and feeling such a rush of love that I couldn't breathe. Mark stood next to me, holding my hand, crying too. He said, I'll protect you both. For the rest of my life. Words are just vibrations in the air, Reddit. Remember that. In 2020, Caleb was born. Pandemic, masks, fears. We stayed home, I breastfed and worked on projects remotely. Mark was just starting his own financial firm then. He called it Thompson Wealth Management. He got an office in downtown Austin, hired the first employees. I was proud of him. I designed the logo for him, for free, of course, helped pick out office furniture. I thought we were building an empire. He insisted that I quit my full-time job and switch to freelancing. More time for the kids and your creativity, he said. I make enough. Just rest, create, grow. I agreed. That was my first strategic mistake. I became financially dependent. I'd transfer client payments to my PayPal, but most of the money went into our joint account. Mark managed all the finances. I had a card linked to our joint account and a separate card with a small amount for spending money. It seemed reasonable to me. He was a financial advisor, for God's sake. Who better to handle money? Now I realize he was building a system where I was a convenient, obedient asset. Not a wife. An asset. I'm no saint. I'm not saying I was a perfect wife. I could be tired, irritable, especially when Caleb was up all night. I might forget to buy his favorite beer. I sometimes snapped at the kids and then cried from guilt. But I never, and I mean never, cheated, lied about money, or planned to leave my husband destitute. It all started about 14 months before the divorce. Mark became different. Not all at once. Little by little. He stopped talking about clients. He used to be able to talk for an hour about helping an elderly couple invest their pension. I actually liked that. I saw nobility in it. But then he became withdrawn. How was your day? He'd answer, fine. Work. If I asked for details, he got annoyed. Then the late nights. First 20 minutes. Then an hour. Then he'd come home after the kids were already asleep. I'd cook dinner, put it in the microwave, and he'd eat alone in the kitchen, staring at his phone. I'd come over to hug him, and he'd pull away. I'm tired, Ellie. Let's do tomorrow. Our sex life collapsed. We had sex every 2 weeks, and it felt like a marital duty. He'd do it mechanically, quickly, then turn to the wall and fall asleep. I'd lie next to him and stare at the ceiling. I thought, maybe he's depressed? Maybe work problems? I need to be patient. I need to support him. I didn't know he was spending his energy and passion on someone else. At the office, he got a new assistant. Brianna Mackenzie. She was 24 then. Tall, thin, with long blonde hair that she always wore down, even while working with papers. I saw her once at a company picnic. She was wearing pink shorts so tight they were inappropriate for a work event. She laughed loudly at Mark's jokes, touched his shoulder when she said, "Oh Mark, you're so funny." I asked him then, "Your assistant is a little friendly?" Mark rolled his eyes. "Ellie, don't start. She's just trying hard. She's going through a tough time, recently divorced. Don't be that jealous wife." And I didn't push. I suppressed the feeling. I called myself paranoid. Here's some advice, Reddit. If your gut says, something's wrong, don't feed it tranquilizers. It's right 90% of the time. The laptop incident happened 6 months before the divorce. I was looking for a phone charger in his home office. The laptop was open, screen unlocked. And I saw a chat on Slack, or whatever internal program they used. The last messages. Brianna. Thanks for last night. You're so thoughtful. No one's ever done anything like that for me. Mark. You deserve it. You're amazing. Brianna. Same time tomorrow? I'll buy that wine you like. Mark. Can't wait. I read it twice. Then 3 times. My heart was in my throat. But then my rational brain kicked in with its defense. Ellie, maybe he bought her a gift for good work. Maybe they're talking about a thank you for overtime. Don't destroy a marriage over 2 messages. I closed the laptop. I didn't say anything to Mark. And I hate myself for that to this day. If I had made a scene then, demanded an explanation, maybe I'd have learned the truth sooner. Maybe I'd have saved myself from debt and humiliation. But I didn't want to destroy the perfect family. Tuesday, September 12th. I remember the date because the next day was Sophie's school play, and I was rehearsing her lines with her. Mark left in the morning as usual, kissed my cheek, said, "Have a good day," patted Caleb on the head. I noticed nothing strange. At 2:30 p.m., he called. His voice was unnaturally calm. Like he'd rehearsed this speech in the shower. "Ellie, we need to talk. I'll be home in an hour." "Okay. Everything all right?" "No. It's not. Please be home." I didn't ask questions. I thought he'd been diagnosed with cancer. Or that his firm was going bankrupt. Or that someone had died. I didn't even think of cheating. That's how much I trusted him. I got dressed, tidied the living room, put the kettle on. I wanted to look composed when he gave me bad news. I made his favorite tea, Earl Grey. He didn't come alone. I saw through the window as his black Porsche Cayenne pulled into the driveway. He got out. Then he opened the passenger door. Brianna stepped out. She was wearing a pink blouse, black pants, and heels. Like they were coming from a business meeting, but no, she was wearing dress shoes, and she was holding his hand. I froze. My first thought was, maybe her car broke down? Maybe they just stopped by for documents? They came inside. Mark looked at me. I still see that look, cold, detached, like he was seeing me for the first time. Ellie, sit down, please. I sat in the armchair. They sat across from me on the couch. Brianna folded her hands on her knees like a good girl. Mark took her hand. I stared at their intertwined fingers and felt the world cracking at the seams. Ellie, I love Brianna. He said it without any preamble. We've been together for 8 months. I've realized that our relationship has been dead for a long time. I don't want to lie to you anymore. I want a divorce. 8 months. 8 months of cheating while I washed his socks, cooked his dinner, picked up the kids from school, while he was on business dinners. I looked at Brianna. She didn't look away. She looked at me with something she probably thought was sympathy. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I asked, did you seriously bring her to our house? The house where our children sleep. The kids aren't here right now, Mark said. And I want us to discuss the terms civilly. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I stood up. You move out today. Or tomorrow morning. I don't want to see you. I'm hiring a lawyer. Mark seemed to expect a different reaction. He opened his mouth to say something, but I'd already left the living room. I went into my studio, locked the door, sat on the floor next to rolls of wallpaper and sobbed. I sobbed until I couldn't breathe. I banged my head against the wall. I thought, this isn't happening to me. This is a movie scene. I'll wake up soon. I didn't wake up. An hour later, I heard the front door slam. Mark had left. He didn't even say goodbye. I didn't sleep for 3 days. Literally. I'd get into bed, close my eyes, and the image would flash. Brianna in her pink blouse, their clasped hands. My stomach would not. I couldn't eat. I lost 8 pounds that first week. I found a lawyer through a friend's recommendation. Victoria Moreno. 62 years old, gray hair in a bun, glasses with metal frames. She saw me in her office, which was crammed with case files. On the wall, a diploma and a photo of her with a Supreme Court justice, I don't remember who, but it looked impressive. She listened without interrupting. I told her about the affair, the kids, the house. Then she asked, do you have proof that he transferred marital funds to the mistress? No, but I can try to find it. Find it. In Texas, adultery doesn't affect asset division, but embezzling marital funds does. Also, take half the money from the joint account right now. Today, I went to the bank. It was humiliating. I stood at the counter, tried to withdraw $20,000, half of what was in the account, and the card didn't work. Mark had blocked it an hour before my visit. He knew. He'd beaten me to it. I went back to Victoria. She frowned. He's playing dirty. So we'll play dirtier. I started digging through documents. Mark had left an old laptop at the house. The same one I'd seen before. I guessed the password on the second try. Walty Art 2016, our dog's name and the year we got him. It was so predictable it was almost funny. On the laptop was everything. His Telegram chats with Brianna, they were synced because he never logged out. Financial files. Photos. I spent 3 nights reading their conversations. Here's what I learned. Brianna wasn't an innocent victim seduced by her boss. She was the instigator. She messaged him first, 3 weeks after being hired. Mark, you're so smart. I learn from you every day. Maybe we could get coffee after work? Not as boss and subordinate, but just as friends? He bit. Within a month, they were kissing in the supply closet. Within 3, he'd rented her an apartment downtown, paying for it out of the firm's petty cash. In their chats, they discussed me. Brianna called me a housewife living off a man's back. Mark didn't defend me. He wrote, she doesn't understand business anyway. I built this world. She just lives in it. The most painful part. They discussed my children. Brianna wrote, your kids will always remind you of the past. Maybe we should give full custody to Ellie? We'll have our own life. Mark replied, we'll see. First, we need to deal with the house. They were planning to leave me homeless. 2 weeks after the talk, Mark filed an eviction lawsuit. He claimed the house was bought before the marriage with his money, and my contributions, $40,000 from my savings into the renovation, were gifts. His lawyer, a big guy named Bob with a red face who smelled of cigars, sent me a letter saying I had 30 days to vacate. I showed the letter to Victoria. She laughed. He's bluffing. The house is in his name, but you paid the mortgage from the joint account, and your improvements increased the value. We have receipts? Yes. We'll fight. But Mark didn't stop. A week later, I got a letter from a collection agency. Amount: $35,427. A credit card opened in my name at Fidelity Bank 3 months ago. Purchases: 2 business class tickets to the Caymans, Ritz-Carlton Hotel, Cartier watch, restaurants. I've never been to the Caymans. I wear a $400 Apple Watch. I called the bank. The operator said the card was opened online, from an IP address registered to the Thompson Wealth Management office. The signature on the agreement was forged. My signature has a specific loop. This was just a scribble. I panicked. I called Mark. He didn't answer. I texted, "Did you open a credit card in my name? That's fraud. I'm going to the police." He replied an hour later, "Prove it. And anyway, those are your expenses. You're a spendthrift. The court will sort it out." I sat in the kitchen and stared at my phone. My hands were shaking. $35,000 in debt that wasn't mine. A house they wanted to take. Children he wanted to take. I felt the floor give way. For the first time in my life, I thought, what if I just got in the car and drove away? Left it all? But I couldn't leave the kids. And I couldn't let him win. That's when I called my mom. My mom's name is Susan. She's 58, a former prosecutor, now retired, growing orchids and drinking martinis in the evening. She's short, with a short haircut, and she has a look that makes you want to confess all your sins immediately. I called her in tears. I told her about the affair, the credit card, the eviction suit. She listened silently. Then she said, "Ellie, honey, put me on speaker. I want you to record what I'm about to say." I did. "You will not pay that debt. You will file a police report for identity theft. You will give all the evidence to Victoria. And you will not leave that house under any circumstances. Understood? Mom, he'll win the suit. He has money, he has a lawyer. Listen to me. I was a prosecutor for 20 years. I've seen 100 marks. They're arrogant until they face the system. You gather every screenshot, every letter, every receipt. You document every word he says. And you be patient. I'm coming in 2 days." She came, with a suitcase, flowers, and a box of her homemade cookies. She hugged me so hard my bones cracked and said, "Now we're a war council." Tears later. First, a plan. Mom moved into the guest room. She picked up the kids from school while I worked with Victoria. She cooked dinner when I didn't have the strength to slice bread. And she interrogated me every evening like an investigator. Where does he keep passwords? What are his habits? Is there anyone in the office who doesn't trust him? I told her about the accountant, Karen. I remembered Mark once complaining that Karen was too curious and sticking her nose where it doesn't belong. Mom said, "That's our way in. Find a way to talk to Karen." I didn't know how to approach Karen. She wasn't my friend. I'd seen her twice in my life. But I found her on Facebook and sent a message. "Hi Karen, I know this is weird, but I'd like to ask you a few questions about Mark's work. Could we meet somewhere neutral? I'll pay for your time." She didn't reply for 3 days. I was losing hope. Then a message came. "Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Brew and Bean on 5th Street. Come alone." Karen turned out to be a woman in her mid-40s, with tired eyes and short, unpolished nails. She drank black coffee and nervously crushed the plastic lid of her cup. She was scared. "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing," she began. "Mark is my boss. If he finds out I talked to you, I'll lose my job." "He's going to lose his job anyway," I said. "And probably his freedom. I'm not threatening, I'm stating facts." Karen took a deep breath and told me everything. She'd worked at Mark's firm for a year and a half. At first, everything was normal. But then she noticed strange transactions. Money was being transferred from elderly clients' accounts to shell companies, then disappearing. Karen asked Mark about it. He said, "They're investments in startups. None of your business." Karen didn't believe him. She dug deeper. It turned out Brianna wasn't just an assistant, she was running those shell companies. Her sister, Jessica, was listed as the director. Mark had moved about $800,000 through these schemes over 2 years. "I wanted to go to the SEC, Karen said. But I was scared. I have 2 kids. My husband left me. If I get fired, I can't make the mortgage. So why talk now? Because he crossed a line." Karen pulled a flash drive from her purse. "This has copies of all the accounts, emails, records, including the ones where he's transferring money to his personal account in the Caymans. He's planning to run. I heard him tell Brianna, after the divorce, we're leaving. Ellie will be left with the debts. I took the flash drive. My fingers trembled. Karen, you won't regret this. I already do. But if my mom in the nursing home found out I knew and said nothing while someone stole from old people like her, she'd curse me. We parted. I took the flash drive to Victoria. Victoria looked at the files, took off her glasses, and said, "This is federal, Ellie. If we send this to the SEC and FBI, Mark will get 10 to 15 years. But I advise winning the divorce first. Don't spook him too early." The hearing was set for October 15th. I wore a black dress, a pearl brooch that belonged to my grandmother, and low heels, so I wouldn't wobble if my legs went weak. Mom sat in the front row of the gallery, holding Caleb on her lap. I brought the kids to show the judge I was a caring mother, while Mark hadn't even asked how they were. Mark arrived in an expensive blue suit. Brianna was with him. She wore a white blazer and black pants. White, Carl, like she was the bride and I was an old rag being thrown out. She held Mark's arm and smiled at his lawyer. The judge was a woman in her mid-50s, sharp-eyed, named Crawford. She looked at us, at Mark, at Brianna, at the kids. Then she said, "Mr. Thompson, your companion is not a party to this case. Please have her take a seat in the gallery." Brianna turned red and moved away. That was the first small triumph. Mark's lawyer, Bob, started with an attack. He said I was a loafer who hadn't worked a day, that I restricted my husband's social contacts, and used the children as leverage. He demanded I vacate the house within 10 days, pay Mark $50,000 for moral damages, and that custody be given to the father because I was unstable and aggressive. I sat and listened as the man I loved, through his lawyer, called me a monster. My cheeks burned, but I didn't cry. I stared straight ahead. Then Victoria took the floor. She stood slowly, adjusted her glasses, and said, "Your Honor, the defense claims my client is a loafer. Allow me to present evidence." She put my employment contract, tax returns for the last 5 years, and a list of completed projects on the screen. I had earned $240,000 freelancing over those years, working at night while the children slept. My client not only worked, she raised the children, managed the household, and supported her husband's business. Now let's see what Mr. Thompson was doing in his free time. Victoria displayed screenshots of Mark and Brianna's chats. I watched the jurors' faces. We had a jury because Mark had demanded one, his mistake. The women's eyes went wide. The men looked away. Victoria quoted Brianna's message. "Your kids will always remind you of the past. Maybe we should give full custody to Ellie?" The room went silent. Mark turned white. "That's not all, Your Honor." Victoria laid the credit card agreement with the forged signature, bank statements, and records of $80,000 transferred to Brianna on the table. Mr. Thompson stole from his family, forged his wife's signature, and planned to leave her destitute. I asked the court to award my client the house, full custody of the children, $120,000 in compensation from Mr. Thompson, and require him to pay court costs. Mark's lawyer tried to object, but Judge Crawford raised her hand. "I'd like to hear the witness." We called Karen. She came in wearing a gray blouse, pale but with a straight back. She testified about the financial schemes. She named amounts, accounts, dates. Mark jumped up. "She's lying. She was fired for stealing office supplies." "Mr. Thompson," the judge raised her voice. "One more word without permission, and I'll fine you $5,000. Mark sat down. I could see his jaw trembling. Judge Crawford delivered her ruling 3 hours later. I sat on the hard bench and prayed to every god I didn't know. The verdict: the house stays with me and the children. Mark must pay $120,000 in compensation. Child support, $4,000 per month for both children. Full custody to me. Mark gets video calls with the children twice a week, supervised by a social worker. When the judge said, "The ruling is effective immediately," I cried. For the first time in weeks, I cried not from pain but from relief. Mom hugged me. Sophie asked, "Mommy, why are you crying?" I said, "Because we won, sweetheart." Mark left the courtroom without looking at me. Brianna followed, and her white blazer no longer looked so triumphant. 3 weeks after the divorce, Mark was arrested. I found out from the news. Headline: Austin financial advisor charged with $800,000 fraud. I was sitting in my studio, drinking coffee, reading the article on my phone. There were photos. Mark in handcuffs, being led away by 2 agents in FBI jackets. Brianna beside him, wearing the same pink as the day they came to announce the divorce. Her eyes were swollen. I felt nothing. Emptiness. I thought I'd be happy, scream, hallelujah, order pizza. But no. I just put down my mug and went to pick up the kids from school. Because life goes on. But that wasn't the end of the story. A month later, I got a call from an FBI agent. His name was Steven Rodriguez. He was handling Mark's case. He said, "Mrs. Thompson, we have reason to believe your ex-husband is connected to another crime. A more serious one. Have you ever heard of a woman named Lindsay Harris?" "No. Who is she?" "Lindsay Harris was Mark's first wife. Or rather, Michael Harris' first wife. That's his real name. He changed it in 2015 before moving to Texas." I nearly dropped the phone. "What do you mean, first wife? He was married before me?" "Yes. And she went missing in 2014. Her body was found in the woods in 2015, but only identified now, thanks to new DNA technology. We suspect Michael, was involved in her murder." I sat down on the floor. Right in the middle of the kitchen. Walter came over and licked my ear. "Are you sure?" I whispered. "We found evidence. A phone he threw away. Fingerprints. And testimony from his brother, Derek, who recently died of cancer but gave a statement before he died. He said Mark confessed to killing Lindsay when they were drunk. Derek was afraid, stayed silent for 8 years, but decided to clear his conscience on his deathbed. I remembered Mark kissing my forehead, playing with the kids, saying, 'I love you.' I slept next to a murderer. I had children with a man who had already taken another woman's life." "Mrs. Thompson," Agent Rodriguez said, "you're safe. He's in jail. But I have to ask. Did you notice anything unusual? Threats? Violence?" "No. Never. He was the perfect husband. Until he wasn't. That's how it always is," the agent said. "That's how it always is." I hired a therapist. Dr. Linda, a short, plump woman with a soft voice, specializing in PTSD. I go to her once a week and tell her about my nightmares. Mark standing over me with a knife, or me walking through the woods and finding Lindsay's body. "You're not at fault," she repeats every time. "You couldn't have known. Psychopaths are good at masking." I know she's right, but the guilt doesn't go away. I look at Sophie and think, if I had been smarter, if I had dug deeper, maybe Lindsay would have gotten justice sooner. Maybe I wouldn't have had children with a killer. The trial for Lindsay Harris' murder is scheduled for next month. I've been called as a witness. I have to testify about Mark's character, his lies, his ability to pretend to be a normal person. I agreed. I'll do it for Lindsay. For her mother, who waited 8 years for her daughter to be found. For every woman who is sleeping next to a man whose smile hides a monster. Brianna, by the way, has testified against Mark. When she found out about the murder, she panicked. She made a deal with the prosecution. 5 years for fraud instead of 15. Plus an admission of complicity in the financial schemes. In exchange for testimony against Mark in Lindsay's case. She said Mark boasted, "I've already gotten rid of the old model. I know how to do it cleanly." I felt sick hearing that. But I'm glad she spoke up. Now the prosecution has another witness. Right now, as I write this, Sophie is drawing at the table, Caleb is watching a train cartoon, and Walter is sleeping on my feet. We live in a new house, smaller but brighter, with a big yard. I put up a swing set for the kids. I planted a rose bed. I'm no longer afraid that the police will knock on the door. My interior design business has grown. It turns out that when you don't have a husband sucking the energy out of you, you can work twice as efficiently. I've hired 2 assistants. I won a bid to design a hotel in Austin. I bought myself a new car, a white Honda CR-V, unassuming but comfortable. I'm not dating. Not yet. Dr. Linda says I need to finish the gestalt with Mark first. That means waiting for the murder verdict. Then, maybe, I'll be ready. But right now, I can't trust. I look at every man and think, what if you have an ex-wife buried in your basement? My mom still lives with me. She says she'll move out when I'm back on my feet, but I suspect she just enjoys being a full-time grandma. She's taught Sophie to play chess. She takes Caleb to soccer. She bakes a pie every Sunday. We don't say Mark's name out loud. To us, he's that person, or the children's father. Sophie sometimes asks why Dad doesn't call. I say, Dad did some very bad things, and now he's in a special place where they're rehabilitating him. She nods and goes back to drawing. Kids are amazingly resilient. Last week, I was at the prison. For the first time, I went to meet with the prosecutor to discuss my testimony. And I asked to see Mark. The prosecutor said, "I don't recommend it. It'll be painful." I said, "I know. But I need to look him in the eye." We met in the visitation room. Glass, phones. Mark looked 10 years older. His eyes were dead, stubble, his jumpsuit baggy. He saw me and smiled. He dared to smile. I picked up the phone. "Hi, Ellie," he said. "You came to visit me? I miss the kids. Did you kill Lindsay?" I asked without preamble. He went silent. His smile vanished. "It's not what you think." "What exactly? Did you strangle her? Shoot her? Poison her? How did you do it, Mark? Or should I call you Michael?" He lowered his eyes. His voice became quiet. "It was an accident. We argued. She fell. I panicked." "You panicked and buried her in the woods? You panicked and changed your name? You panicked and married me to start a new life?" He didn't answer. "I'm going to testify against you, Mark. I'll tell them how you lied, how you forged documents, how you planned to leave me homeless. I'll tell them how caring and loving you can be when it suits you. And the jury will see who you really are." "You won't do that," he said. "You're the mother of my children. You won't want them to know their father is a killer. They will know. When they grow up, I won't lie to them. I'll tell them the truth. And they'll decide what to do with it." Mark punched the glass. A guard approached him. I put down the phone and walked away without looking back. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and cried for 20 minutes. Then I wiped my face, put on my sunglasses, and drove home. Because I had children waiting for their dinner. Reddit, I don't know how the murder trial will end. The prosecutor says there's enough evidence. The phone, the fingerprints, the testimony from his brother and Brianna. But Mark's lawyers are expensive and experienced. They might get him off. If that happens, if he walks free, I'll leave. Change my name, city, country. I won't let him near my children. I'd rather live in Canada under a false name than see his face again. But I hope for the best. I hope justice exists. That Lindsay can finally rest. That Lindsay's mother can sleep peacefully. I wrote this story because I want other women to read it and think. If your man is too perfect, if he has no old friends, if he doesn't talk to his family, if he controls all the finances, dig. Check his past. Find his first wife. Find his old names. Because sometimes cheating is the least of the evils. Sometimes, behind it, there's something much darker. And you don't want to wake up one morning and find out you've been sleeping next to a monster. Thank you for reading. Sorry for any mistakes. I typed through tears and anger. If you want, I'll update the post after the verdict. Keep your fingers crossed for me. Update. Thanks for the gold, platinum, and messages of support. I've read every one. You give me strength. Special thanks to those who wrote, "I went through this too. We're not alone. We're strong." Update 2. Mom says hi. She says, "Tell those internet people that if anyone meets Mark in hell, spit in his face for me." Mom's a treasure. Update 3. 2 weeks later, the murder trial has been postponed until January. I'll keep you posted. Until then, hugs to all. Value yourselves. Don't let anyone tell you you're overreacting. Your feelings are your lighthouses. Don't turn them off.